Chapter 357. Lin Feng sensed the movement in the sutra depository and realized that someone had already achieved results, deducing a brand new technique that was based on the 8 trigrams Heavenly Great Way and integrated with their own understanding of Tao. Wang Lin also smiled. I guess it's second senior brother. Previously, it was Zhu Yi who wrote the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi, and his understanding of Tao was very profound. Moreover, Zhu Yi was indeed better at such theoretical things. The master and disciple entered the sutra depository and came to the center of the library on the first floor. They saw Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the rest sitting in a circle with their backs to each other, facing the bookshelves. On the bookshelves in front of them, there was a Tao technique manual that was constantly condensing. The shadows were already very clear, and they were only a step away from completely transforming into a physical body. Among them, the Tao technique manual in front of Zhu Yi had completely condensed into a physical body, turning into the appearance of an ancient book, and was placed on the bookshelf silently. Sensing the arrival of Lin Feng and Wang Lin, Zhu Yi, who had his eyes closed, opened his eyes and stood up. He bowed to Lin Feng. "Greetings, master." Then, he turned to look at Wang Lin, and his eyes flickered slightly. "Congratulations, third junior brother, for stepping into the golden elixir realm in one fell swoop." Wang Lin nodded. "Second senior brother, you're too polite." Zhu Yi handed the ancient book on the bookshelf to Lin Feng. "Master, this is the 8 trigrams divine evolution golden scripture that I comprehended and figured out. Master, please give me some guidance." Lin Feng took the ancient book and did not open it. He scanned it with his divine sense, and after skimming through the contents of the book, he nodded slightly. "Not bad, very good." The Tao technique that Zhu Yi compiled was very organized and extended. From the content, the 8 trigrams divine evolution golden scripture was a Tao technique that was built on the foundation of the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi. The two were of the same origin. However, in terms of the concept, the 8 trigrams evolution Saint Golden Stamp was not completely an upgrade and development of the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi. Instead, it had integrated Zhu Yi's own understanding of the principles of heaven and earth. Lin Feng could clearly see the shadow of Zhu Yi's magnificent essay in the North Wind Sea. Zhu Yi's understanding of the general trend of the mortal Tao had been fused into the 8 trigrams evolution Saint Gold scripture, and it carried on the past and brought forth the new while ceaselessly advancing with unstoppable might. Within it, there was a grand aspiration and will of constantly surpassing oneself, of everyone becoming a saint. Lin Feng thought to himself, that essay only has the first 2 paragraphs now. If Xiaoyi can complete the entire essay, then his understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth will be very profound. Even so, this 8 trigrams evolution Saint Golden Stamp is already very extraordinary. It could be imagined that after the group of second-generation disciples cultivated the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi in the Qi refinement stage, they would cultivate different techniques when they reached the foundation establishment stage. Choosing the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi would be the most effortless and smooth. The principle that Zhu Yi believed in was that a gentleman should constantly strive to improve himself. He would not deliberately pave the path for his disciples so that their cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort and be smooth sailing. However, the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi and the 8 trigrams evolution Saint Golden Stamp were of the same origin. Imperceptibly, it would make the cultivators much smoother. In fact, the inheritance of the Tao techniques of other sects was in the same situation. They progressed step by step. Slowly, Lin Feng pondered for a moment and said, "Xiaoyi, the Tao technique you created is excellent. However, you must be careful when choosing disciples." Zhu Yi understood what Lin Feng meant and nodded repeatedly. "I understand. I will definitely not teach a group of disciples who follow the rules and are full of craftsmanship. I have already integrated such a principle into the 8 trigrams evolution's Saint Golden Stamp. Cultivation is to continuously surpass oneself in order to obtain the Tao. Only by understanding this can one truly understand the true meaning of the Tao technique." Zhu Yi said, "This is the Tao technique I prepared for the disciples in the foundation establishment stage. In the future, when they advance to the golden elixir period, I believe that they will have a deeper and more thorough understanding of it. Lin Feng nodded in satisfaction and turned to look at Xiao Yan and the others. Then, he saw the Tao Technique books on the bookshelves in front of Xiao Yan, and Tiny Tot turned solid at almost the same time. The two of them opened their eyes and saw Lin Feng. They smiled at the same time and said, "Master, fortunately, I didn't fail you." Then, they saw Wang Lin, who was standing at the side, and laughed at the same time. Xiao Yan smiled and said, "Third junior brother, congratulations." Tiny Tot also said with a smile, "Third senior brother, congratulations on soaring into the sky after suffering." Wang Lin was not angry at his teasing. He shook his head and said with a smile, "I've only just started. Little junior brother, don't make fun of me." Lin Feng smiled and said, "What Tao technique have you comprehended? Let me see." Xiao Yan and Tiny Tot nodded at the same time. "I was just about to let Master take a look." "Oh, as expected." Lin Feng received the Tao technique from the two of them. He only needed to take a look at the title on the cover to have a rough idea of what it was. Xiao Yan's Tao technique was called the Burning Sky Art. It described the evolution and mystery of the power of flames between heaven and earth. Maybe it's because he cultivates the power of true fire. Xiao Yan's Tao technique doesn't seem too close to Lin Feng's own sect's 8 trigrams book of the Great Tao of Heaven. The difference is very far, completely like his own Tao technique comprehension after comprehending several great true fires. But in fact, with a sweep of his divine sense, Lin Feng knew that the root of Xiao Yan's Tao technique was still in the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture. It was like the scene when Xiao Yan advanced to the middle stage of Golden Elixir. After Zhu Yi and Tiny Tot passed the Yin Fire Tribulation and advanced to the middle stage of Golden Elixir, they both extracted 8 kinds of spiritual energy from the natural cycle and turned it into the 8 trigrams. Only when Xiao Yan advanced to the middle stage of the Aurous Core stage did he attract a monstrous raging fire, burning fiercely. That is not because he can only extract fire attribute spiritual energy from the natural environment, but because he also ignited all of the other spiritual energy, turning them into fuel for the raging fire. Xiao Yan comprehended the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture. After comprehending the basic essence, he gradually embarked on the path of specialization. He concentrated on cultivating the Tao of flame creation, and many other concepts were only used as a reference. When Xiao Yan first cultivated the 8 trigrams Universal Great Tao scripture, he was the same as Zhu Yi, comprehending the true meaning of creation of the heavens. Different from Zhu Yi's transformation, Xiao Yan at that time mainly comprehended the will of destruction and used it to create his own unique technique divine ability, 8 trigrams collapse. However, in the future cultivation, Xiao Yan's comprehension of Tao technique gradually developed in other ways. Of course, this was also related to his cultivation of true fire such as true fire of the sun and nether evil flame. It would definitely be affected, but the main factor was his personality and hobbies. Therefore, Xiao Yan's Burning Sky Art was more closely related to the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture than Zhu Yi's 8 trigrams Evolution Sage Golden Stamp. It could be regarded as a major branch of the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture. It described the concept of raging fire in detail. On this issue, the type of Tiny Tot's Tao technique was similar, but not the same. Tiny Tot named the Tao technique he comprehended true explanation of wind and thunder, which also integrated his own understanding of the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture and various great Tao of heaven and earth. Different from Xiao Yan's specialization, Xiao Budian did not separate the concepts of wind and lightning. Within his wind and lightning true record, the power of wind and lightning coexisted with each other, an existence that was opposite yet unified. This was Tiny Tot's thinking and understanding of the opposing forces of the two extremes on the basis of the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture, and he integrated it into his own Tao technique. As the understanding of the two extremes and the concept of the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture became more profound, he could transcend the two extremes and move towards a higher level. Tiny Tot's newly created mysterious yellow 4-word formula came from this. Lin Feng looked at the Tao technique created by the two of them and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, they put in a lot of effort. Compared to Xiao Yan and the other two in the Golden Elixir period, Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing, who were still in the foundation establishment stage, were much slower. As Yang Qing said, the two of them entered the sect slightly later, so the time they had to comprehend the 8 trigrams Universal Great Way scripture was relatively limited. But even so, there was already a shadow of a scroll on the bookshelf in front of the two of them, which was constantly condensing into reality. This meant that they were already on the right track and had their own train of thought. Now, they were in the process of constantly sorting out, summarizing, and perfecting. "Master, disciple will also start," said Wang Lin as he planned to walk to a bookshelf and sit down, but he was stopped by Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Little Linzi, don't be busy first. After Hong Yan and Xiao Qingzi finish creating their Dao technique, Master has another important matter that needs your participation. After you're done with that matter, you can create your Dao technique again." Wang Lin was a little surprised and nodded, "Yes, Master." He glanced at Xiao Yan and the other two with a questioning look. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and Tiny Tot looked at each other with a blank look on their faces. They shook their heads slightly at Wang Lin together, indicating that they did not know what the other important matter that Lin Feng mentioned was. The four of them looked at each other with curiosity in their eyes. Silently, they quietened down and waited. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing almost finished creating their Dao technique at the same time. Yu Hongyan's cultivation realm was higher, while Yang Qing's comprehension was higher. On the bookshelf in front of the two of them, the two Dao techniques condensed into reality at the same time and turned into 2 ancient books. They opened their eyes and bowed to Lin Feng together first. Then they were shocked at the same time. Obviously, they noticed Wang Lin's breakthrough and hurriedly congratulated him. Lin Feng's Dao technique swept through the two's Dao technique ancient books. As expected, they were the crystallization of their respective paths of cultivation. Although they were still a little immature, they all had their own profoundness. Yu Hongyan's Dao technique was called Void Technique. She was the same as Xiao Yan, concentrating on the same path. The content of the Dao technique was mainly to figure out the path of space changes in the heavens. Previously, Yu Hongyan's understanding of the mysteries of space was different from Tiny Tot's suppression and control of the universe formula. Yu Hongyan's understanding of the principles of space was mainly destructive. But today, from her void technique, Lin Feng could see that she had vaguely improved again. Her understanding of the mysteries of space was deeper, and at the same time, it was more complex. Yang Qing handed the self-created Dao technique to Lin Feng. Lin Feng glanced at her. Yang Qing was a little embarrassed. "It's very simple." Lin Feng's divine sense swept through it, and a smile appeared on his face. "It's already very good. Little Qing, it seems that you haven't wasted these days. After settling and sorting out this time, the time for you to condense the pill cauldron is ripe." In fact, from Lin Feng's point of view, not only Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing, but even the Dao techniques of Zhu Yi and the other two also had many omissions. This was related to their current cultivation realms. Lin Feng believed that in the future, they would continue to perfect their respective Dao techniques, so that they would eventually reach perfection. At that time, under Xianmen Tianzong, even a random branch of Dao technique would be able to match the treasures of the major forces in the outside world. It was basically a secret manual. "All right, all of you, follow Master." Lin Feng smiled and led the group of disciples out of the hidden scriptures tower. Standing at the peak of Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng pinched his hands together and then suddenly clapped them together. With a boom, the entire Yujing Mountain shook for a moment. Chapter 358. Yujing Mountain beneath their feet shook violently. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the other disciples were all shocked. This was because they saw that under Lin Feng's control, 6 huge rocks had left the mountain's body and floated in the vast void. These 6 rocks were as clear as white jade. Each one was the size of a small mountain, and their shapes were all different. Lin Feng had not deliberately carved them. Although these rocks had left Yujing Mountain's body, they did not lose control. Instead, they revolved around Yujing Mountain like satellites, protecting it in the center. At this moment, Lin Feng's mind was completely in harmony with White Jade Mountain, the mysterious Heaven Treasure Tree, and the cyclic Purple Qi. The four of them had reached a perfect balance and were united as never before. The branches of the mysterious heaven treasure tree trembled slightly. 6 incomparably thick branches and leaves that were extremely close to the tree's trunk detached from the mysterious heaven treasure tree and transformed into 6 streaks of rainbow light. One end of each 7-colored stream of light was connected to a cliff on the side of Jade Capital Mountain, and the other end was connected to a mountain rock that was floating in the air. The cyclic purple chi surged around the streaks of light, forming a purple passageway that looked like a bridge. The cyclic purple chi that had originally enveloped Yujing Mountain like a boundless sea of clouds expanded outwards once again, covering the 6 rocks as well. This way, the 6 rocks not only existed independently, but were also closely connected to Yujing Mountain's body, becoming one. After finishing this step, Lin Feng revealed a smile on his face, turning his head to look at the disciples behind him. Xiao Yan and the other 5 stared blankly at everything that had happened before them. It took them a long time to recover. They looked at each other, then at the 6 white jade rocks floating in the sky. They had a vague guess in their hearts, and expressions of surprise and joy appeared on their faces. The little one gulped and moved in front of Lin Feng. "Master, are these ours?" The other 5 were still looking at the rocks in the space. When they heard this, although they did not move, they all pricked up their ears. Lin Feng smiled saying, "Master is very satisfied with the progress of your Dao technique cultivation. You've all reached Master's expectations and even surpassed them. That's why I said before that you can all also be masters. Since you're masters, you naturally need your own cave abodes. Today, I'll help you open one." Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and the others and continued. Chicks have to leave the nest eventually to fight their own storms, so today is only the first step. Although you're opening your abodes, they'll still be on Yujing Mountain. In the future, when your cultivation improves further and you find a paradise or grotto heaven outside Jade Capital Mountain that suits you, you will be able to truly create an independent world that belongs to each of you. The little one was shocked. "Master, you're chasing us away?" Lin Feng shook his head and laughed. He patted his little head. "Silly boy, as long as you're willing, you can come back to Yujing Mountain to visit me at any time. If you really don't want to leave, or if you can't find a cave abode that suits you, so what if you live on this mountain for the rest of your lives? It's not like I can't afford to raise you." Xiao Yan was silent for a while. He suddenly took a step forward and bowed to Lin Feng. "No matter what happens in the future, I'll always be Xianmen Tianzong's disciple. I'll always be Master's disciple." The other 5, including the usually playful little one, all straightened their expressions and bowed to Lin Feng. "I'll always be the successor of Xianmen Tianzong, and I'll always be Master's disciple." Lin Feng looked at them and smiled. He nodded slowly. "You don't have to be so nervous. From the bottom of my heart, I've always hoped that you'll be able to walk your own path in life and live a life that's unique to you." He pointed to the 6 rocks in the void outside Yujing Mountain and said with a smile, "Although there's no difference between the 6 rocks, you should still choose for yourselves. Don't think that everything will be fine once you've chosen. You'll have to come up with your own ideas on how to decorate your cave abodes and put them into practice. If you really can't handle it, then I'll help you. It'll mainly be up to you." When Xiao Yan and the others heard this, they all looked excited and eager to try. The 6 of them looked at each other. Xiao Yan smiled and said, "For something like this, as the eldest senior brother, I should let you have some leeway. You can choose first." Zhu Yi also smiled faintly. Eldest senior brother's words make sense. Since that's the case, let's start from the bottom and work backwards. Youngest junior brother will take the lead. Eldest senior brother and I will be at the bottom. Wang Lin also nodded his head. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing were both a little embarrassed. Xiao Budian giggled and said, "Hee, then I will not pass on this responsibility to others." He suddenly moved to Lin Feng's side and said with a smile, "Master, tell me quietly, which of these 6 cave abodes is the best?" Xiao Yan and the others pointed at him and scolded in unison. "Brat, you're so lazy and slippery." The little guy smiled and did not get angry. He made a face at them. Lin Feng smiled and said, "It's all the same now. However, what will happen in the future will depend on how you manage and arrange it." The little guy's gaze circled around, and after a long while, he soared into the air and landed on a rainbow-colored bridge that was formed from the trunk of a precious tree branch and the surrounding purple clouds. He smiled and said, "I'll choose this one." He looked back at the cave abode on the white jade mountain in the distance and praised, "Great." Lin Feng smiled slightly. He was quite satisfied with his work. The action just now was also Lin Feng exerting his Tao to the extreme, even exceeding his previous limit. His connection with Yujing Mountain, the mysterious sky precious tree, and the purple gas was unprecedentedly close. That was why he could build these 6 cave abodes that were connected to Yujing Mountain but independent of each other. When Xiao Yan and the others deduced and analyzed the Tao in the hidden scripture tower, they could sort out and summarize their previous understanding of the Tao, which played the role of learning and accumulating. Lin Feng's method just now had the same effect. At the moment, Lin Feng's understanding of his own Tao did not really go to the next level, but his foundation was more solid and thick. In the future, his cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. Following Xiao Budian, the others also each chose a cave abode. Just as Lin Feng said, these cave abodes were all constructed from jade capital mountain rocks of almost the same size. There was nothing different about them, so the disciples were also very casual when choosing. Seeing that they had finished choosing, Lin Feng led everyone to the cave abode that the little guy had chosen. "Tianhao, you do it yourself as to how to build the cave abode. If you can't do it, I will help you." After passing through the rainbow bridge, everyone came to this mountain rock. Lin Feng turned around and said to the little guy with a smile, "Be careful. You will settle down here in the future." The little guy nodded excitedly. He put his hands behind his back like a little adult and strolled around the mountain rock. His expression seemed relaxed, but in reality, when he walked, his speed was extremely slow. It was as if he was pausing with every step. And with every step he took, the shape of the mountain rock would change. The purple gas that enveloped the mountain rock surged non-stop. Lin Feng stood at the side and did not stay idle. He used his own magic power to communicate with the white jade mountain rock and the little guy, helping the two to establish a connection, so that the little guy could successfully refine this white jade mountain rock. The process of the little guy transforming the mountain rock into a cave abode was actually the process of him refining this white jade mountain rock. This mountain rock contains the concept of time. The little guy had already figured out a few patterns along the way. He suddenly stopped, put his palms together, and silently said, "Universe." The universe character was activated, and the little guy's speed of refining the mountain rock obviously increased. And through refining the mountain rock, his understanding of this divine ability became more and more profound. In the end, he even used the universe character. The universe and universe characters were used together. Silently, the little guy stood at the top of the white jade mountain rock. The purple gas surrounded his body. Lin Feng smiled and pointed at the white jade mountain rock. The shape of the mountain rock completely began to change. The top of the mountain rock that the little guy was standing on had a large depression. In the end, the place where he stood became a huge open space. The open space was surrounded by mountains on all sides. The upper half of the white jade mountain rock had become a huge valley. Standing in the middle of the valley, the little guy looked up at the sky. After a long time, he retracted his magic power and divine ability. He looked at Lin Feng. "Master, just now I seem to have seen the future development of my black-yellow 4-word formula. That feeling was very mysterious." Lin Feng smiled. "It's very normal. Your cultivation has improved again. Continue walking down the right path. This is just the beginning. Now, give your cave abode a name." The little guy laughed, and without even thinking, he landed on the rainbow cloud bridge outside of the valley. Then he turned around, raised his hand, and wrote 3 large words in the air. These 3 words landed on the mountain rock wall to the right of the valley entrance, and could be clearly seen on the stone wall. "Desolate Sky Valley." The little guy smiled and cupped his fists at Xiao Yan and the others. "Welcome to my desolate Sky Valley." The others were in the desolate Sky Valley. They all felt a desolate and ancient aura, as if they had returned to the ancient world. However, in this primitive atmosphere, It was full of vitality and infinite possibilities. It was like the beginning of all things, ready to experience the vicissitudes of life and evolve into thousands of things. Lin Feng smiled and clapped his hands. Two streams of light flew out from the Black Sky's Time Cave on Yujing Mountain and landed in the desolate Sky Valley. They were the flowing Wind Seal and the Thunder Seal. The Thunder Seal landed in the center of the desolate Sky Valley and arranged into the Wind and Thunder Transformation Seal. From now on, this seal will be placed here with you. Lin Feng said to the little guy, leave the Kuei-Nyo King on Yujing Mountain first. When we find a suitable wind-type spirit beast, we will send it here. The little guy nodded repeatedly and smiled. I will also move those spirit beasts, spirit herbs, and spirit fruits here. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. He turned to look at Xiao Yan and the others and said, let's go. Let me see how you will decorate your cave abodes. Chapter 359. Everyone, including the little guy, left the desolate Sky Valley and walked towards the white jade mountain rock that Yang Qing chose. Yang Qing's expression was a bit apprehensive. Unlike Xiao Yan's group of 4 who had already formed the golden elixir, and unlike Yu Hongyan who was already at the late stage of foundation establishment and was only one step away from forming his core, Yang Qing was only at the middle stage of foundation establishment. Opening a cave and accepting disciples with his fellow apprentices really made him feel a bit uncertain. However, Lin Feng had a positive attitude towards the Tao technique he derived and created. This gave Yang Qing a bit more confidence. With Lin Feng's help, Yang Qing also refined his own white jade mountain rock. However, his cultivation realm was lower than the little guy's, so he spent a lot more time. Yang Qing did not do too many special treatments to the mountain rock. After refining it, the mountain rock's shape did not change much. He only opened up a cave halfway up the mountain. Apart from this, a dark green stream of water gurgled between the mountain rocks. It was precisely the lunar true water. The cyclic purple qi landed on the mountain rocks and turned into soil. Large amounts of flowers and trees grew on the soil, causing the mountain ridge where Yang Qing's cave was located to be lush and verdant. The cave was a completely different world. The white jade mountain rock emitted a faint radiance. The cave was not dark and serene, but it was very peaceful. The faint sound of spring water could be heard. Inside the cave, there was also a clear spring formed by the lunar true water flowing. Just from the living environment alone, Yang Qing's cave had a different kind of taste. It made people feel relaxed and happy. Yang Qing stood outside the cave and stared at the entrance of the cave in a daze. Yu Hongyan looked at him and asked in a low voice, "What do you want to name the cave? Water Cloud Cave?" After a moment of silence, Yang Qing took a deep breath and answered, "I will never forget the Water Cloud Cave. However, I am now Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Master's disciple. Master often said that one must look forward." He raised his hand and wrote the 4 words, Nirvana Paradise, in the air. The 4 words landed on the stone wall at the side of the cave and merged into it. I obtained nirvanic rebirth here. Master bestowed upon me a new life. My immortal's cave shall be called Nirvanic Paradise. Yu Hongyan, Xiao Yan, and the others smiled when they heard this. Xiao Yan walked forward and patted Yang Qing's shoulder. All of us obtained nirvana because of Master. Yang Qing was a little embarrassed. I was rash. Zhu Yi shook his head and said with a smile, "Since it's from the bottom of my heart, it doesn't matter even if I'm rash. As for the name of your cave abode, little Qing, you decide for yourself." Lin Feng said with a smile, "But what I want to say is that the achievements you have today are due to your own efforts. Master leads the way, but cultivation depends on oneself. If rotten wood cannot be carved, then no matter how capable I am, I would not be able to teach disciples like you." Lin Feng waved his hand. "All right, let's go. Now, let's go to Hongyan's cave." Yu Hongyan smiled. "I'm afraid I'll need Master's help." The group arrived at the white jade mountain rock that Yu Hongyan had chosen. With Lin Feng's help, Yu Hongyan successfully refined the white jade mountain rock. After the refinement, the white jade mountain rock turned into the shape of a valley. Yu Hongyan looked at the valley and turned to bow to Lin Feng. "Master, please make your move." Lin Feng asked, "What do you want to do?" Yu Hongyan pursed his lips. His eyes flashed with nostalgia, pain, and anger. He said slowly, "Disciple wants to turn this heavenly cycle purple chi into wind and snow." Although Disciple has comprehended the 8 trigrams Great Way scripture that Master taught me, Disciple's comprehension of the power of wind and snow is not enough. Everyone present knew about Yu Hongyan's past, and they all felt sad. Lin Feng nodded and flicked his finger. The heavenly cycle purple chi above the valley instantly turned into pure white snow. It floated down from the sky and turned the valley into a world of ice and snow. Yu Hongyan also used her magic power to transform the heavenly cycle purple chi. Instantly, the sound of wind blew in the valley. She looked at the scene of wind and snow. For a moment, she couldn't help but fall into a daze. "It's been so many years since I've gone back." Lin Feng lowered his head and sighed. He directly wrote the words, "Snow Wind Valley," on the stone wall of the valley's entrance for Yu Hongyan. "Thank you, Master." Yu Hongyan came back to her senses and thanked Lin Feng. This was the name she had prepared for her cave abode. The red-haired girl had a strong personality. Her fragile state only lasted for a moment. She quickly regained her composure. Seeing that she had pulled herself together, Lin Feng slowly nodded and led everyone to Wang Lin's cave abode. Wang Lin built his own cave abode, but the results surprised everyone. Xiao Budian came to the side of Xiao Yan and the others. He lowered his voice and said, "I thought that third brother's cave abode would be full of evil spirits." Xiao Yan and Yu Hongyan nodded together. Yang Qing also swallowed her saliva and said quietly, "Although I don't think third brother's cave abode will be as terrifying as Tianhao said, I think it should be full of netherworld true water, right?" Xiao Yan smiled bitterly. "I thought so too. But now it seems that third brother is really surprising." Zhu Yi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "Third brother's understanding of nature is deeper than we thought." He turned his head and looked at Xiao Budian and Xiao Yan. Although third brother is at the early stage of golden elixir and has just been promoted, in terms of understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth, in some aspects, he may even be higher than the 3 of us in the middle stage of golden elixir. Xiao Yan and Xiao Budian looked at Wang Lin not far away. Both of their faces showed a thoughtful expression at the same time. Even Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing's expressions changed slightly. They seemed to have thought of something and fell into contemplation. Lin Feng smiled slightly at the side and thought, "Little Lin's full power of understanding is revealed at this moment. Even I'm looking forward to it. What kind of results will he have when he enters the scripture depository to create the Tao?" Wang Lin's Immortal's Cave was like Yang Qing's. It did not change the appearance of the white jade mountain rock. It only used the cyclic purple chi to transform the soil and vegetation on the mountain rock. Then Wang Lin built a wooden house on the mountain. There was nothing special about it, and there was nothing shocking about it. There was no need to even mention the little guy's half-joking way of making it seem lifeless, cold, and austere. Perhaps it was like how Yang Qing used the lunar true water to arrange the Yellow Springs true water on the mountain. It was just that ordinary, just that ordinary. Between the green mountains, there was a fence and a wooden door, forming a small courtyard. In the courtyard, there was a small wooden hut. It couldn't be said to be simple, but it wasn't elegant either. It was just the most ordinary hut in the mountains. Wang Lin stood at the entrance of the courtyard. His expression was calm and indifferent. He looked at Lin Feng and the others with a smile on his face. Lin Feng nodded his head, returning to simplicity, understanding of existence and non-existence. Little Lin's very good. Wang Lin smiled and cupped his fists towards Xiao Yan and the others. He said, "I still have to thank my fellow apprentices. I followed my master to observe the Tao you guys created. I had some enlightenment in my heart. That was why I was able to improve so much after forming my gold core." Zhu Yi said seriously, "What we saw today was a great inspiration to us. I also have to thank third junior apprentice brother." From Xiao Yan, Xiao Budian, to Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing, the 4 of them also cupped their fists towards Wang Lin to show their gratitude. Lin Feng said with a smile, "Little Lin, name your abode." Wang Lin nodded his head. However, he didn't write on the white jade mountain rock. Instead, he turned around and wrote the 3 words, Fan Lin Residence, on the wooden door of the small courtyard behind him. Seeing this, Lin Feng laughed out loud. His expression was joyful. With a sweep of his mana, he brought all the disciples and flew towards Zhu Yi's cave in the distance. When they reached the white jade mountain rock that Zhu Yi chose, Zhu Yi didn't start to refine it immediately. Instead, he stood on the mountain rock silently. His eyes looked at the white jade mountain rock under his feet. His eyes kept flickering. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing could vaguely catch Zhu Yi's thoughts. However, it was like looking at flowers in a fog. It wasn't clear. Xiao Yan and Xiao Budian could see it clearly. Xiao Yan sighed. After seeing 3rd junior apprentice brother's cave, not only 2nd junior apprentice brother, I am also a little lost. Xiao Budian smiled. Luckily, I have already set up the cave first. Otherwise, I would have a headache too. Wang Lin smiled at the side and didn't say anything. He looked at Zhu Yi with a probing gaze. He was curious about what Zhu Yi would choose next. Even if you feel hesitant now, I believe that Xiao Yi will make the same choice as you. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and said with a smile. Xiao Yan smiled. Master really understands me. However, I really can't make up my mind. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Budian. As for Tianhao, although you are 1 step ahead and saved yourself the pain of choosing, if you really had to choose now, I'm afraid you would be the same as Xiao Yan and Xiao Yi. Xiao Budian giggled. Lin Feng saw that Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing were both in deep thought, so he said, Watch Xiao Yi's next move carefully. This will be a good lesson for you guys. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing were shocked at the same time. They raised their heads to look at Zhu. Then, they saw that Zhu Yi, who had been motionless, suddenly began his own refinement. Lin Feng smiled and also used his own mana to help Zhu. The white jade mountain rock under Zhu Yi's feet changed shape and appearance rapidly. Its height kept decreasing, but its cross-sectional area kept expanding. In the end, it became an open space, like a chessboard, suspended in the void. It was connected to Jade Jing Mountain through the Rainbow Cloud Bridge. On the open space, the cyclic purple chi kept gathering and finally formed a huge palace. The appearance of the palace was not gorgeous, but it was simple and solemn. It was grand and majestic, not giving people the slightest sense of oppression. It was not high and mighty, nor was it dignified. However, it contained a convincing artistic conception, guiding others on the right path. Carrying on the past and opening up the future, constantly improving oneself, constantly surpassing the predecessors, and surpassing one's own path. This palace was the embodiment of Zhu Yi's own artistic conception. Zhu Yi did not stop. He directly wrote the words, Qian Tian Palace, on the horizontal board above the palace. Qian hexagram, the first hexagram of the 64 hexagram, the upper hexagram. The elephant said, Heaven moves vigorously, and a gentleman constantly strives to improve himself. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing saw it and had a look of realization, so that's how it is. Xiao Yan and Xiao Budian looked at each other and smiled. Wang Lin also had a look of admiration on his face and nodded repeatedly. Chapter 360. Lin Feng watched Zhu Yi refine the white jade mountain rock, build the Qian Tian Hall, and finally inscribe the horizontal board, and a smile appeared on his face. Wang Lin's understanding of the concept of returning to the natural state had certainly inspired Zhu Yi and the others, and was also worthy of their praise. But that was Wang Lin's path after all, and for Zhu Yi, Xiao Yan, and the others, inspiration was inspiration, but if they wanted to change their path and imitate and learn from Wang Lin, it would be completely neglecting the essentials. Zhu Yi understood this principle, and naturally made the right choice. Just like him, Xiao Yan and Xiao Budian, all 3 of them were like Wang Lin, each of them had a firm will, and had their own beliefs and ideas. How could they be easily shaken by others? Even Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing, whose cultivation was slightly lower, did not understand the reason for a while, but after understanding, they would also make the right choice. The 6 fellow disciples looked at each other and laughed at the same time. Xiao Budian smiled and said to Wang Lin, 3rd senior brother, you failed, you didn't get any of them. Wang Lin laughed and shook his head, I'm happy for this. Xiao Yan smiled at this time and said, "Okay, the last one, it's my turn." Everyone followed Xiao Yan to the last white jade mountain rock. After Xiao Yan arrived, without saying anything, he immediately began to refine the mountain rock. Almost all of his cultivation was used to suppress the 3 great true fires that were causing chaos in his body, so Lin Feng gave him special treatment. He used his own magic power to help Xiao Yan complete his vision and finally refine the white jade mountain rock. Xiao Yan only needed to separate his own divine sense. Xiao Yan did not change the appearance of the mountain rock, but only opened a cave inside. After arranging it properly, Xiao Yan slowly stepped into the cave, looked at the top of the cave for a moment, and turned to Lin Feng and said, "Master, I want to open 7 grooves on the top of the cave." Lin Feng's eyes flashed, laughing out loud saying, "Little Yan, you have such ambition, how could Master not give you a helping hand?" After saying that, Lin Feng waved his hand, and 7 grooves appeared on the top of the cave. When Zhu Yi and the others saw this scene, their eyes all lit up, and they looked at Xiao Yan. "Eldest senior brother is so bold." Xiao Yan smiled, and silently performed the incantation, and 3 balls of fire appeared on his body. One was bluish-purple, one was bright gold, and one was a pale gold that flashed red and blue. They were the 3 great true fires, the Nether Evil Emperor, the True Sun Fire, and the Nanmingli Fire. This was a part of the true fire power that Xiao Yan separated from the 3 great true fire sources in his body. Seeing him perform the incantation, Lin Feng also separated his own magic power to help him control it, to prevent the 3 great true fires from going out of control. The 3 balls of fire, under Lin Feng's suppression, kept quiet, but everyone present could feel the explosive and terrifying power. The fire fell into the 3 holes on the top of the cave, and silently burned, leaving 4 empty holes. Lin Feng helped Xiao Yan add a magic power imprint, stabilizing the true fires in the 3 holes. Xiao Yan communicated with the cave that he had refined with his divine sense, and the mysterious power of the white jade mountain rock gradually reached a stable balance with the 3 great true fires. From outside the cave, the huge mountain rock, which was originally flawless white jade, suddenly had a bright fire coming out of the mountain. The whole mountain rock seemed to be burning, revealing a grand and high-spirited aura. Lin Feng smiled, "For now, I will protect you with my magic power. In the future, after you have completely refined the 3 great true fires, you can deal with this place again." Xiao Yan nodded, "Of course." Xiao Budian, who was beside him, smiled, "Eldest senior brother is really bold. You actually plan to gather the 7 great true fires. I remember that no one has ever done it before, right?" Xiao Yan shrugged his shoulders and smiled, "I am very interested in trying." Lin Feng looked at him and secretly curled his lips in his heart. "Young man, I have 200% confidence in you to achieve your goal. Right now, there is still one kind of true fire waiting for you on the mountain. You just need to clean up the 3 on your body first." Yang Qing asked curiously, "Eldest senior brother, what are you going to name your cave?" Xiao Yan smiled, "I am afraid of trouble. The less trouble, the better." He turned to look at Lin Feng. "Master, please help me inscribe. The Tao technique I created is called Burning Heaven's Secret Art, and my cave will also use the same name. Let's call it Burning Heaven Cliff." Xiao Budian and the others jeered, "Eldest senior brother, you are too easy, too tasteless." Lin Feng smiled, led everyone out of the cave, and directly wrote the 3 big words, "Burning Heaven Cliff," on the white jade mountain rock. The fire in the mountain rock flickered, reflecting the 3 words "Burning Heaven Cliff," as if it was burning together, with a sense of unrestrained and unrestrained. "Everything is settled, right?" Lin Feng put his hands together, and the 6 rainbow cloud bridges connecting Yujing Mountain and the 6 cave residences shook simultaneously. The power of space connected, causing the flow of spirit energy on both sides to completely stabilize. In the void, purple mist surged like waves, transforming into a sea of clouds. In the purple sea of clouds, the blazing Burning Heaven Cliff, the faint sounds of reading could be heard from the Qian Tian Palace, the calm and natural Fan Lin residence, the Snow Wind Valley with wind and snow, the Nirvana paradise with green mountains and water, and the desolate and primitive desolate Heaven Valley. The 6 great cave residences surrounded and protected the jade capital Celestial Mountain in the center. The spirit energy connected with each other, like a whole, and the 6 cave residences each had their own characteristics, existing independently. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others looked at this scene in a daze. On Yujing Mountain, Kong Nanhua, Miao Shihao, Jieyu, Kuei King, Tunten, Zhuge Fengling and the others also came out from various places, looking at the scene in front of them in shock, exclaiming in unison. A group of second-generation disciples leaned on the windows of their disciples' residences, looking at the spectacular scene in front of them, all at a loss for words. In the past, they only knew that their sect was very strong, but today, they undoubtedly received an even more direct shock. Lin Feng looked at this scene, then looked at the disciples under his command and the people in the sect, thinking in his heart, "My sect is gradually growing even though it is still a seedling, but as long as it continues to develop, it will eventually become a towering tree, unstoppable." With a smile, Lin Feng used his magic power and directly threw the golden deer and black spirit dragon on Jade Capital Mountain into Xiao Budian's desolate Heaven Valley. Then, with a lift of his hand, he also threw Tunten in. The little guy was originally drooling as he looked at the golden deer, but suddenly saw a scene that almost made his soul leave his body. "Master, why did you throw that guy in as well? Isn't this sending a weasel into a chicken coop?" Lin Feng said with a smile, "In the entire Yujing Mountain, only you can afford to raise her, so this heavy responsibility naturally falls on you." The others burst into laughter, and Xiao Yan patted the little guy's shoulder. "Little junior brother, I'll leave her to you. At least she can eat more normal food at your place, so she won't steal food everywhere. I've already caught her 3 times in the pill house." Zhu Yi, Wang Lin and Yu Hongyan all smiled, and Yang Qing even laughed secretly. He was afraid of being tormented by Tunten. Tunten visited the medicine valley that Yang Qing was in charge of every 2 or 3 days, sometimes even asking for true lunar water, making Yang Qing miserable. She could not beat it and could not chase it away, giving her a headache. The little guy's small face scrunched up like a bun. Next, Lin Feng released 2 more streams of magic power that landed on the returning Heaven Gold Pavilion and the hidden Scripture Tower. He turned to Xiao Yan and Wang Lin and said with a smile, "I have already connected the Pill House and the hidden Scripture Tower to your Burning Heaven Cliff and Mortal Forest residence respectively. With the token that I gave you, you can directly go to the Pill House and the hidden Scripture Tower from your cave abodes." Wang Lin nodded, while Xiao Yan was a little absent-minded. Looking at the crying little guy, he felt a lingering fear. Lin Feng smiled and glanced at him. "But, do you want me to add a companion for you?" Xiao Yan immediately shook his head and smiled at Lin Feng. "How can that be, master? I'm just thinking that with my current situation, I'm afraid I can't go to the pill house to refine pills." These few days had been like a year for him. Now that he could finally avoid that fox, he naturally didn't want Lin Feng to trick him again. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. He did not expose him and brought everyone back to Jade Capital Mountain. Then, they came to the front of the hidden Scripture Tower. Before entering the hidden Scripture Tower, Lin Feng turned to Zhu Yi and said, "Pass down the order. 3 days later, I will open a forum to talk about Dharma. All the second-generation disciples will attend. If you are interested, you can come and listen." Zhu Yi's spirit was lifted. "Yes, master." Xiao Yan and the others looked at each other and smiled. "We will naturally come." As Lin Feng's personal disciples, they could seek guidance from Lin Feng anytime they encountered any obstacles in their cultivation. But for Lin Feng's forum talk, they were all in favor. They would never complain no matter how many times they listened. Lin Feng stretched out his hand and pointed at them. "Go back to your cave abodes and prepare well. Familiarize yourself with the cave abodes and figure out your own Dharma. After I open the forum talk, I will select the most outstanding second-generation disciples and have them become your formal disciples." Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others straightened their expressions and bowed to Lin Feng. "We will definitely prepare well. Master, don't worry." Lin Feng nodded and said with a smile, "As for who will become your disciple, it will all depend on the fate of master and disciple. I will not force anyone to be your disciple. I will select a certain number of disciples. Then, each of them will choose which of you to be their disciple. This is their choice. Slowly Lin Feng said, and next it will be your turn to choose. Whether you want to accept someone as your disciple or not is entirely up to you. You can also set up difficulties and questions to test the disciples who are preparing to be your disciple. So in these 3 days, you can prepare yourselves well. You can also observe those second-generation disciples and see if there is anyone that you like. This can also be considered as a test of your eyesight. See if the person you like can pass my previous selection. Hearing this, all the disciples' faces revealed smiles. They looked at each other and were somewhat eager to try. Xiao Budian said with a smile, "This is interesting. It's just that second senior brother is taking advantage of us too much." Zhu Yi smiled but did not say anything. But at this moment, when his smile fell into the eyes of the others, they felt disgusted no matter how they looked at it. Everyone waved their fists at him and said in unison, "Don't be too happy too early. Just wait and see." Lin Feng said with a smile, "Okay, you can all disperse and prepare well." He turned to Wang Lin and said, "Little Lin, I will let you go for now. Go back and prepare first. After this, you still have to go to the scripture depository." Wang Lin smiled and nodded, "Master, don't worry. I won't forget." After sending off the disciples, Lin Feng walked into the scripture depository. He stood in the center of the library on the first floor and clapped his hands. Streams of light flew out of his body one after another. Chapter 361. Stream after stream of light flew out of Lin Feng's body, landing on the bookshelves in the library and condensing into the light and shadows of Tao formulas and spell chapters. Under the effect of Lin Feng's mana, the scripture talismans danced in the shadows, gradually condensing into a solid form. The speed of condensing was not fast, but there were many books condensing at the same time. Apart from the art of Akala that he had already deduced before, this time Lin Feng also deduced the 9 Heavens Thunder technique, the Ksitigarbha scripture, the Heavenly Wind scripture, the Stellar Mystic art, the Yellow Springs Nirvana art, the Book of Taiwe, the Quicksand Hidden art, the Vast River art and other Tao techniques that he had accumulated before, filling up the library. Other than that, there was also the 9 Heavens Thunder summoning technique, Martial Path Peerless Flying Sword, White Bone Continuous Hammer, Cloud Dragon Escape technique, Heaven Cage Sigil and Little Reincarnation technique. All sorts of abilities were deduced by Lin Feng and placed together in the scripture depository. As for the Wild Lightning Blade, Ksitigarbha Golden Body, Rage of Akala, Netherworld Puppet and Yellow Springs Finger, these abilities that were derived from Tao techniques, they didn't need to be deduced separately. Cultivating the Tao techniques they belonged to would naturally be able to cultivate them. Cultivating them alone would cause one to be unable to accurately understand the essence within. Time passed quickly. After Lin Feng finished doing all this, he slowly walked up to the second floor of the scripture depository. Looking at the scrolls hanging on the 4 walls of the empty second floor, Lin Feng nodded slightly. 2 of the scrolls had pictures on them. That was the result of merging the Great Sun Brilliant Heaven scripture and Lunar scripture. Other than these 2 scrolls, the pictures on the other scrolls were blank. Lin Feng flicked his finger and the true meaning of 2 types of Tao techniques separately landed on 2 blank scrolls. One of them was a picture of a vast land. The other was a picture of dark clouds pressing down and divine winds howling angrily. These were the thoughts and intents of the Book of Qian Kun State Ksitigarbha and Wind God Formless technique that Lin Feng injected into the scrolls. After doing this, Lin Feng walked out of the scripture repository and looked at the disciples' abode in the distance. Although Lin Feng was focused on deriving Tao skills and divine arts, he had a good grasp of time. At this moment, 3 days had passed since he told everyone that he was going to open the forum and give a lecture. The second-generation disciples living in the disciples' residences were all very excited. During the past 3 days, they had been looking forward to this moment. Towards Lin Feng, this ancestor, they had all admired him for a long time, but it was very difficult for them to meet him. Now that Lin Feng personally opened the altar to pass on his teachings, it was like a grand festival for them. In the battle before the opening ceremony outside of Sand Continent City, Lin Feng had descended with Jade Capital Mountain. With a snap of his fingers, he had destroyed all the major forces that had besieged Xianmen Tianzong. The scene of him descending from the heavens was deeply engraved in the minds of these new disciples. And 3 days ago, the opening of the 6 cave abodes had added a layer of magnificent brilliance to Xianmen Tianzong, causing every new disciple to yearn for it and feel honored. A little fatty was lying on the windowsill of the abode, his face full of longing. "Brother Feng, when can we also have a cave abode like that?" A young man beside him had a cynical smile on his face as he yawned. "Cultivate well first, don't bite off more than you can chew." Lin Feng looked at this young man and smiled. He had an impression of this person. His name was Lu Xiaofeng. Back then, before the opening ceremony outside of Sand Continent City, it was him and a few companions who wanted to rush to Sand Continent to be apprenticed to a master. In the end, they were intercepted by people from the Wind God sect, causing Xiao Yan and Miao Shihao to go and rescue them. From then on, a great battle had begun. He looked cynical and didn't care about anything, but deep in his bones, he had an unyielding strength that would rather break than bend. At that time, he who didn't have much qi refinement stage cultivation, when faced with the oppression of the Wind God sect's elders during the Golden Elixir period, he still refused to yield and spoke out righteously. Lu Xiaofeng saw that the little fatty beside him was still staring outside in a daze, so he patted him. "Instead of being envious of the fish in the pond, why don't we retreat and form a net and figure out the secrets of the Tao art? Today is the Patriarch's lecture, we will be tested later." The little fatty nodded. "Indeed, I must listen carefully later. But Brother Feng, don't worry, you will definitely pass the test." Lu Xiaofeng spread his palms. "That's hard to say. Who knows what the test will be? Not to mention me, even those 3 might not have the confidence." When the little fatty heard this, his face instantly fell. "Forget about senior brother Su and senior sister Li. Why does that annoying person from the grassland have such a high cultivation talent as well? There's no justice in this world." As he spoke, the little fatty suddenly felt a chill at the back of his head. He turned to look and was almost blinded by the cold light. He sucked in a breath of cold air and shouted, "Ing Rosa, if you dare to point your broken flying knife at me again, I'll fight you to the death." The people in the room seemed to have already gotten used to this. Lin Feng looked at this scene with interest. Generally speaking, people liked to stick together. With one person as the core, they would attract some people to form a small group. Among the second-generation disciples in Xianmen Tianzong, they were also divided into a few small groups based on their usual relationships. For example, because Lu Xiaofeng was righteous, optimistic and open-minded, and had a high cultivation, he was the leader of one of the small groups. But there were always exceptions. There were also a few people who didn't like to stick together and liked to be alone. At this moment, the dark-skinned youth that the little fatty was glaring at was the most typical example. He sat alone in the corner of the room and didn't communicate with anyone. With a glance, Lin Feng knew that this dark-skinned youth was one of the few with the highest cultivation among all the second-generation disciples. However, when the people around him saw him, they all showed respect and even disgust on their faces. This dark-skinned youth called Ing Rosa clearly had the characteristics of a person from the grassland. Silently, he sat there like a lone wolf, his entire body emitting an aura that kept people away. He pinched the blade of a dagger in his right hand and held it upside down, as if he was about to throw a flying dagger. At this moment, he put the dagger in front of him. He squinted his eyes and stared at the little fatty next to Lu Xiaofeng, as if he was aiming. Hearing the little fatty's angry roar, Ing Rosa smiled nonchalantly, revealing his snow-white teeth like a wolf. "Fight to the death? Come, I'll be waiting for you." The little fatty choked. He could feel an undisguised killing intent from Ing Rosa. Everyone in the room frowned. Almost everyone had been targeted by Rosa's throwing knives. Although he had never actually thrown a knife, everyone could feel the murderous intent that was like a blade against their backs. Interesting, a wolf cub. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. He could tell that this dark-skinned youth had really killed before, and he had killed more than 1 or 2 people. He didn't have any qualms about killing people. Using throwing knives to aim at others was actually just a personal habit of his, but if the other party really wanted to attack him out of humiliation, Rosa wouldn't mind giving them a knife. Although he wasn't very old, he had a crazed, bloodthirsty, and lawless aura in his bones. Lu Xiaofeng stood up and stood in front of the little fatty. He said lazily, Rosa, if you have the ability, use it on outsiders. What's the point of being ruthless to your fellow disciples? If you really want to play, I'll play with you. Rosa smiled nonchalantly. You can't. At this moment, a youth in purple pushed open the door and saw Rosa facing off against a group of people. He frowned. Stop fooling around. It's almost time for the founder's opening ceremony. Everyone come out and gather. When this person appeared, Rosa immediately gave up on Lu Xiaofeng. He looked at the youth in purple with a cold glint in his eyes. Su Yunsheng. The youth in purple, Su Yunsheng calmly said, Let's go. Elder Zhu values punctuality very much. Everyone, don't miss the hour. Lu Xiaofeng shrugged. Let's go. He was the first to walk out with Su Yunsheng. The others followed behind him. When the little fatty reached the door, he turned to look at Eloza and snorted, Eloza, if you really have the ability, why don't you beat senior brother Su once? You haven't won a single time since you joined the sect, right? Rosa wasn't annoyed by this. Instead, he nodded. The test after the founder's speech will be your chance. He grinned. His snow-white teeth gave off a faint smell of blood. The little fatty wanted to tease him a bit more, but he swallowed his saliva and turned away resentfully. Lin Feng's divine sense followed them out of the disciples' abode, seeing the 28 second-generation disciples of his sect all gathered together. Sweeping over them, there are 4 of the most outstanding people. It's only been a short 2 months since they entered the sect, and they already have some qi cultivation. Their cultivation progress is quite impressive. Other than Su Yunxing, Rosa, and Lu Xiaofeng, the last person was a young girl. She was wearing a purple Xianmen Tianzong uniform. She was tall and had a beautiful face. She had a gentle smile on her face, making her look very amiable. Lin Feng's gaze shifted. I remember her name is Li Xingfei? She, Su Yunxing, and Lu Xiaofeng were the 3 largest circles among the second-generation disciples. Zhu Yi stood in front of the disciples' abode. Silently, he watched the second-generation disciples gather. With a wave of his hand, he used his magic power to bring them together. They landed on a leaf of the mysterious heaven treasure tree. This leaf had an area of an acre and was incomparably huge. The group of people sat down cross-legged. Zhu Yi climbed up a relatively high leaf and sat down. There, Xiao Yan, Xiao Budian, Wang Lin, and Yang Qing were already there. When they saw Zhu Yi, they cupped their hands together. Zhu Yi also cupped his hands in return. After a while, Yu Hongyan also flew over to the mysterious heaven treasure tree with Xiao Huan and a group of other children. Lin Feng had specially allowed these children to listen to the lecture together. Because these children had almost been refined into human pills in the past, their bodies had accumulated a large amount of medicinal power and spirit energy. With a little guidance, they could be converted into qi refinement cultivators. Therefore, at this moment, their average level was much higher than the second-generation disciples. This also put a lot of pressure on the official disciples. They did not dare to slack off in the slightest when cultivating. It's a pity that the potential of these children can't compare to the official disciples. Lin Feng thought to himself, although they can't be as heaven-defying as Xiao Yan and the others, it's quite possible that a few of the second-generation disciples can be molded. However, looking at the crowd, a faint smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. The crops have just ripened and a blind bear comes to break my stick. Isn't it a little too simple? Among this batch of disciples, there was a grain of sand from another family. Lin Feng had already discovered this during the apprenticeship ceremony. However, he did not point it out. Instead, he pushed the boat to stay. Lin Feng smiled wickedly. A spy whose identity has already been exposed will actually have the opposite effect. Chapter 362. Lin Feng had already expected that someone would come to his sect to play undercover. However, Xianmen Tianzong had only truly become famous and attracted the attention of the world since the opening ceremony in the Sand Continent. Now, with the recent Desolate Sea Assembly, his momentum had grown. Someone had already mixed in the first disciple recruitment. Although there was only one person, some people were really quite hardworking. However, to Lin Feng, the other party had not withdrawn from his original sect and had come to seek a master. Because of the system, he could see through it at a glance. Although Lin Feng could not accept him as a personal disciple, this person could become a disciple of Xiao Yan and the others. Lin Feng was also happy to keep him on the mountain. Perhaps he would be of great use in the future and obtain some unexpected gains. What really made Lin Feng more vigilant was that if someone was first kicked out of his own sect and then ordered to come and hide, it would not be easy to find out. However, such a person would definitely not be able to cultivate the Tao techniques of his original sect, nor would he be able to obtain any benefits from his original sect. His loyalty would have to face a great test, and it was very likely that he would turn against Xianmen Tianzong. After all, people were after benefits. If there was a sect that treated you well and had a bright future, why would you still be loyal to your original sect? Lin Feng deeply believed that as long as he wielded the hoe well, there was no wall that could not be dug down. Of course, the party that sent this person to infiltrate would definitely have many ways to control him. However, to Lin Feng, there was a lot more room for him to maneuver, and it was not impossible to deal with him. Actually, it's still fine now. The next time we open the mountain gate to recruit disciples, it will be the time to mix in the sand on a large scale. Lin Feng looked at a certain person among the second-generation disciples and smiled. Little friend, I wonder which sect sent you? It's okay if I don't know now. I have all the time in the world to find out your background. Lin Feng took a step out of the void, and he was already on a branch of the mysterious sky treasure tree. He did not emit any power, but the people sitting on the tree felt as if they were looking up at the endless starry sky. Xiao Yan and the other direct disciples bowed first. Disciple respectfully greets teacher. Only then did the group of youths return to their senses. Together with the group of children, they bowed to Lin Feng. Disciples welcomed the arrival of the ancestral master. No need for formalities. Lin Feng's expression was calm as his purple robe fluttered in the wind. It was as if his entire being had become one with the mysterious sky treasure tree. He sat down on a branch of the tree and began his first sermon. Lin Feng did not choose to explain Taoist techniques that were too profound or abstruse. Instead, he extracted a small section from Zhu Yi's notes to the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of I. At the same time, Lin Feng didn't explain the Tao to the disciples word by word. He casually picked out a section of the ancient book just to make it convenient for everyone to understand. Lin Feng's lecture this time was mainly to teach everyone the correct method and route to comprehend and cultivate Tao arts, and to point out a clear general direction for them. As for how to understand it specifically, it would depend on each person's own comprehension. This was also how Lin Feng taught Xiao Yan and the other direct disciples before. However, these second-generation disciples' comprehension and talent couldn't be compared to Xiao Yan and the others. Therefore, Lin Feng couldn't help but explain in more detail. But overall, Lin Feng's teaching philosophy was that it was better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Fish was the goal, and fishing was the method. A fish could satisfy a temporary hunger, but it couldn't satisfy a long-term hunger. If one wanted to have fish to eat forever, then they had to learn how to fish. This was the core of Lin Feng's sermon this time. After finishing his sermon, Lin Feng allowed everyone to ask him questions. Then, he answered the doubts they had in their daily cultivation process. It could be a general confusion, or it could be a difficult problem in the specific process of cultivating Tao arts. This was originally a privilege that only Xiao Yan and the other direct disciples had. Today, a group of second-generation disciples finally got this opportunity, so they naturally had to grasp it well. In response to the questions raised by everyone, Lin Feng patiently answered them one by one. Even the questions raised by Xiao Huan and the other children were no exception. When these young people heard it, they all felt enlightened. However, they only thought about the problem in a straight line. Xiao Yan and the other 5 direct disciples who were listening by the side were all immersed in deep thought. They gained a lot by drawing analogies. When Lin Feng answered a question, when Xiao Yan and the others heard it, their thinking often diverged and extended to other more things. After this sermon, the ones who really gained the most were actually Xiao Yan and the others. Zhu Yi sighed softly and used his mana to transmit his voice to the other 5 senior and junior brothers. After listening to Master's sermon today, I finally feel that I really misled the disciples previously. Xiao Yan and the others looked at each other and laughed bitterly. Xiao Yan frowned. Later on, we still have to take in disciples. I originally thought that it wouldn't be difficult, but now it seems that I'm really panicking. Xiao Budian, Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing all nodded their heads. Wang Lin frowned. This means that we still need to work harder. Lin Feng didn't know that his sermon had actually struck the confidence of a few direct disciples who wanted to take in disciples. In all fairness, in this sermon, he himself also gained some benefits. Just like what he said to Xiao Yan, Xiao Budian and the others before, if he wanted to impart Dao arts to others, then he had to first thoroughly understand Dao arts. The process of teaching disciples was also a master's own understanding of Dao arts. And teaching these youngsters who are still only at the Qi disciple stage is different from teaching Xiao Yan and the rest of the 6. These youngsters whose cultivation is still low will often ask some inexplicable and seemingly whimsical questions. Answering these questions required Lin Feng to understand his own Dao arts like the back of his hand. Moreover, occasionally he would also gain some inspiration because of these strange and wonderful thoughts. Some were useful, some were useless, but there were also some gains. Just like an ignorant child, sometimes an innocent sentence could give inspiration to an adult. 10,000 Dao arts return to truth. The great Dao is the simplest, many principles are actually common. When this sermon ended, everyone was silent and lowered their heads in contemplation. Silently pondered over every sentence and every word that Lin Feng had said before. The more they thought about it, the more they felt the aftertaste. The higher the cultivation of the listener, the more they could comprehend the true meaning and gain more. At the same time, they felt that the current Lin Feng was like the sky and the sea, vast and boundless, unfathomable. Lin Feng looked at the crowd in front of him calmly and smiled. He did not rush them, but waited patiently. After a long time, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin and Xiao Budian stood up first. They did not say a word, but they all bowed to Lin Feng. After a while, Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing's eyes became clear again. They stood up together and bowed to Lin Feng. Later, the second-generation disciples and the disciples of the mountain gate stood up one after another, and their faces were full of joy as they bowed to Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled and waved his hand, signaling them to dispense with the formalities. When the last person recovered from his contemplation, Lin Feng smiled and said, "Today, other than the sermon, I also want to test you all." He looked at Zhu Yi and nodded with a smile. Zhu Yi bowed, then turned to the crowd and said in a clear voice, "Today, all the disciples who can pass the ancestors' test will be qualified to be promoted. We 6 brothers will accept you as inner disciples, and you will receive our teachings. In addition, you will be qualified to enter the scripture depository, and there will be other rewards." Zhu Yi looked at the slightly restless crowd. Seeing that they could still maintain order and calm, he could not help but nod in satisfaction and said, "Those who did not pass the test do not need to be discouraged. In the future, I will still teach you Dao techniques every once in a while, and in the future, you will still have the opportunity to be promoted to inner disciples. You only need to practice seriously." He said to Xiao Huan and the other disciples, "If you want to be apprenticed to a master, you can also participate in the ancestors' test. If you can pass, you will also have the opportunity to become inner disciples. Even if you can't pass, if you perform well, you can also become official disciples. It's all up to you." Xiao Huan and the others were still children. Although they had learned some Qi cultivation methods under the guidance of Kang Nanhua, Zhu Yi, and Yu Hongyan, most of them were absent-minded. Only a few of them had expressions of eagerness on their faces. "I have a question." At this moment, someone in the crowd suddenly asked, "Even if you pass the test, Can you only become the inner disciples of the elders? If you perform well, can you become the ancestors' personal disciple? Everyone revealed an expression of surprise and looked at the person who spoke. It was a dark, skinny youth with an arrogant and unruly expression. It was Irosa. Xiao Budian and the others looked at each other and smiled. Xiao Yan said, "I like this troublemaker." Zhu Yi glanced at Irosa and did not say anything. He turned to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng calmly said, "If he is outstanding enough, why not?" Irosa nodded his head in satisfaction. His eyes shone with excitement. What caught Lin Feng's attention was that, in addition to Irosa, Su Yunxing and Li Xingfei's eyes also flashed. Lu Xiaofeng, who was always lazy and didn't care about anything, also became serious. Geniuses were always very confident in themselves. Especially when they saw that Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing, who had joined the sect with them, were high up in the air and might even become their masters. This filled these young geniuses with fighting spirit. Lin Feng faintly smiled and lightly flicked his finger. A strand of purple gas condensed in midair and transformed into a huge purple palace. The palace was next to the branches of the mysterious sky treasure tree, and the entrance was directly facing everyone. My test is very simple. Right now, there is a maze in front of you. The inside of the maze is connected in all directions, and there are many forks in the road. However, there is only one entrance and exit. Lin Feng lightly said, "I'll give you 1 day. Those who can walk out of the maze will pass the test." Looking at the huge purple palace in front of them, the group of youths were a bit stunned. They never thought that Lin Feng's test would be so childish. Even Xiao Yan and the others were a bit surprised, but after they carefully sensed the purple labyrinth, their faces all revealed a look of sudden understanding. Xiao Yan and the little guy even began to laugh mischievously, somewhat taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. Yang Qing sighed and kindly reminded everyone, "Keep your spirits up. There are many things to test in this maze. If you are even the slightest bit careless, let alone 1 day, you might not even be able to walk out of it for a lifetime." Chapter 363. Hearing Yang Qing's words, everyone was shocked. They looked at the purple chi maze in front of them and became more cautious. Everyone subconsciously looked at Su Yunxing, Li Xingfei, and Lu Xiaofeng. Su Yunxing and Lu Xiaofeng looked at the maze in silence. Li Xingfei sighed softly. "After entering the maze, I'm afraid we can only rely on ourselves. We won't be able to help each other." Her voice was pleasant to the ear, but it was not so pleasant to the ears of the people around her. Su Yunxing turned around and said calmly, "Although we won't enter one by one, even if we enter together, we will most likely be affected by the purple chi and won't be able to help each other." Everyone looked at each other and then turned to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression was tranquil, not saying anything. Zhu Yi, who was at the side, opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, enter the maze together. In this maze, the patriarch has integrated the power of space into it. Countless layers of space are stacked together in the same space. Everyone who enters the maze will enter an independent space layer. In this layer, you will be the only one, so you can only rely on yourself to walk out of the maze." The group of young people gasped and looked at the purple chi maze in front of them with fear on their faces. Su Yunxing and Li Xingfei's expressions became solemn. They originally thought that only their senses, speech, vision, and so on would be affected by the purple chi, but Lin Feng's method was clearly beyond their imagination. Everyone who entered the purple chi labyrinth was like entering an independent space alone. They were the only ones there. Zhu Yi continued, "Of course, for the sake of fairness, the composition of the maze and the path in each space layer will be exactly the same. If there are no other questions, you can start entering. The countdown starts now, and you have 1 day." Lin Feng looked at everyone, suddenly faintly smiling. "I'll give you guys a hint. Jump out of the shackles in your thinking, be flexible and adaptable, stick to your original heart in terms of will, break through the fabrication. Walking out of this maze won't be difficult at all." Everyone fell into deep thought when they heard this. After a long time, Lu Xiaofeng stared at the entrance of the labyrinth and suddenly laughed. "Let's go. Didn't we learn from a master just for this day?" With that, he walked towards the entrance. However, a figure was even faster than him. It was Iroza. Iroza arrived at the entrance of the labyrinth. He paused for a moment and turned to look at Su Yunxing. Although he didn't say anything, his meaning was clear. Ever since he had entered the sect, whether it was in terms of increasing his realm in Taoist arts or in the minor test given by Zhu Yi, Su Yunxing had always been the best among the second-generation disciples, while Ingroza had always been slightly inferior to Su Yunxing. Sometimes it wasn't that bad. The two of them were evenly matched, but Eliezer had never been able to truly defeat Su Yunxing even once. In the eyes of this dark and skinny young man that was proud and aloof like a wolf, amongst all the second-generation disciples, only Su Yunxing could be considered to be a match for him. As for the others, including Li Xingfei and Lu Xiaofeng, they were all insignificant. Facing Iroza's challenge, Su Yunxing's expression was calm as he slowly nodded his head. To him, Iroza was a good opponent. If it wasn't for the pressure from Iroza, who was only half a step behind him, he might not have been able to improve so quickly. Seeing that Su Yunxing accepted the challenge, Iroza coldly smiled, turned around, and directly entered the purple labyrinth. Someone unhappily said to Su Yunxing, "Senior apprentice brother Su, teach him a lesson." Su Yunxing slightly smiled, "Don't worry, I won't lose." Although he said that, Su Yunxing didn't move his feet. Silently, he still stood in the same place, looking at the purple labyrinth in a daze. After a long time, when everyone had entered the labyrinth, Su Yunxing let out a breath and also walked in. "Second apprentice brother, they were all learning Taoist arts under you before, so you should have the most experience. Who do you think will be the first person to walk out?" At this moment, the little guy grinned and asked Zhu Yi, "Or should I ask, how many people do you think will successfully walk out in a day?" Zhu Yi calmly said, "No more than 10 people will be able to walk out." As for the first person to walk out of the labyrinth, he glanced at the purple labyrinth. "Master, this labyrinth looks simple, but it is actually a comprehensive test for these disciples. First, it tests their ability to sense spirit energy. This is determined by their innate aptitude. The stronger their ability to sense spirit energy, the easier it is for them to determine the mysteries of the labyrinth through the spirit energy fluctuations. Second, it tests their willpower. They have to remain calm and composed in the chaotic labyrinth. Their emotions must not be affected, and they must be able to resist the confusion brought about by the labyrinth's illusions and make the correct judgment. Finally, it depends on their ability to understand and adapt. If they can't figure out the true mysteries hidden in the labyrinth and find the correct method, and only stubbornly walk to the end, as fifth apprentice brother said, let alone a day, they won't be able to walk out of the labyrinth even if they walk for a lifetime. At this point, Zhu Yi smiled bitterly. "Although I've taught them Tao before, we've only known each other for a short time, so I dare not say that I know them like the back of my hand. I can only say that the first person to walk out of the labyrinth will not be among the 4 of them, Su Yunxing, Ingroza, Li Xingfei, or Lu Xiaofeng." After a pause, he added, "Personally, I think Su Yunxing and Ingroza will be more likely." Listening to their discussion, Lin Feng smiled and turned to look at the void beside him. "Nanhua and Shihao, are you interested in picking a few disciples to inherit your mantle?" 2 cracks appeared in the void, and Kong Nanhua and Miao Shihao walked out. Kong Nanhua smiled and shook his head. "A gentleman doesn't take away what others love, so I won't be participating." Miao Shihao also smiled and said, "I'm not in the mood to teach disciples right now. If I really want to take in disciples, Big Brother Shihao, will go to the ends of the world to look for them and personally choose a child who is most suitable for my Tao." He looked at the purple chi labyrinth and smiled, "But now, I'm also very interested in who will be the first to walk out of this labyrinth." Lin Feng smiled slightly. "Let's wait and see." At this moment, including the group of children, several dozen people were in the labyrinth, but because of Lin Feng's spatial manipulation, each of them was in an independent layer of space. Since they could not rely on others, they could only come up with their own ingenious plans. This group of people, like 8 immortals crossing the sea, each displayed their own remarkable abilities. Some people used a more rational method, trying to draw coordinates at every turn in the labyrinth, and once they encountered a dead end, they would turn back and take another turn. Li Xingfei was one of these people. The labyrinth was extremely huge, as if there was no end to it. Although she was very patient, facing the endless crossroads and dead ends, she was still a little worried. Especially in the process of turning back, Li Xingfei acutely discovered that the road signs she had left behind had been altered. If she had not discovered it in time, she might have taken a wrong turn and been completely trapped in the labyrinth. Li Xingfei sucked in a breath of cold air. The road signs she had left behind had not had any accidents, and had played their intended role. If she had become lazy because of this and let her guard down, then this sudden alteration would really be enough to make her suffer. In this way of walking by leaving marks, once there was a mistake and one did not discover it in time, taking it for granted and continuing to walk according to the mark, then one would go further and further wrong, until there was no turning back. Li Xingfei was meticulous and alert, so she discovered it relatively early and turned back in time. However, many people who used the same method as her did not discover the problem in time. They did not expect that the labyrinth would shamelessly change the coordinates left by the people who entered it. As a result, the labyrinth was so sinister that it was impossible to find the directions, and even people who were sold helped to count the money. In the end, the labyrinth was no longer satisfied with just changing the marks, and even shamelessly to the point of forging the marks. It also left marks on the roads that the people who entered it had never walked before. As a result, some disciples completely walked on the blind path until the dark. Not to mention finding the exit of the labyrinth, they could not even return to the entrance. Some people used the method of leaving marks to explore, while others used a more idealistic method, which was to walk completely based on their intuition. It sounded ridiculous, but in fact, it was not. Although it was said to be based on intuition, in fact, it was also based on the perception of the flow of spiritual qi in the labyrinth. This was the method that Liu Xiaofeng used. As he moved forward, every time there was a fork in the road, he almost did not hesitate, choosing the route completely based on his intuition. This method works. A smile appeared on Liu Xiaofeng's face. Along the way, he did not encounter a dead end even once. Every time he chose a fork in the road, he chose the right route. No dead ends, no wrong paths. In this way, Liu Xiaofeng's efficiency was naturally not low. No matter how big the labyrinth is, as long as it's not really endless, there will be a time when I can walk through it. But who knew that after walking for a long time, there would still be no result? He did not encounter a dead end, but the labyrinth seemed to really have no end. The flow of spiritual qi in the labyrinth is misleading me. Liu Xiaofeng reacted quickly, knowing that he had fallen into the purple qi labyrinth's trap. There are some crossroads in the labyrinth that lead in all directions. I must have walked many repeated routes, which is why I can't get out. It's even possible that I'm walking in circles in a relatively large area. He was not discouraged, nor was he impatient. This seemingly sloppy young man was actually extraordinarily calm. Taking a deep breath, Liu Xiaofeng began to turn around and walk back. This time, he was more cautious. When he encountered a direction that was too obvious for the flow of spiritual qi to point him in, he walked in the opposite direction. After spending some time, Liu Xiaofeng walked all the way back to the entrance of the labyrinth. This made him heave a sigh of relief. At least he did not completely lose himself in the labyrinth. However, he was also a little worried. He had wasted half a day for nothing, but in the end, he had returned to the starting point. In every spatial layer of the labyrinth, there were images projected in the air, turning into images so that Lin Feng and the others could keep track of the situation at any time. Looking at the various expressions of the people, Lin Feng and his disciples, as well as Kang Nanhua and Miao Shihao, who were watching from the side, all smiled. Xiao Yan shook his head and said with a smile, "As expected, it's not that easy to walk through." Beside him, Zhu Yi suddenly chuckled. As expected, the two of them have been competing since they entered the school. Everyone followed Zhu Yi's gaze and saw two images showing the appearances of Su Yunxing and Ying Rosa. These two people were walking in the labyrinth, and very coincidentally, they had used the exact same method to determine their direction. Chapter 364. Although he was the first to enter the labyrinth, he stopped after entering. Silently stood at the entrance of the labyrinth, looking at the forks to the left and right. He did not blindly advance, but closed his eyes and silently sensed the direction of the spiritual energy in the labyrinth. He was rebellious and lawless, but he was not reckless. On the contrary, the experience of wandering from place to place since his childhood made his will to live and ability to live far exceed his peers. In an unknown environment, he was calmer and more cautious than his peers. He was like a lone wolf, and wolves were cold-blooded, ferocious, cunning, and cautious animals. After a long time, he opened his eyes and looked at the labyrinth in front of him. His eyes flickered, and he became even more cautious. If the labyrinth was ordinary, he would have used the same method as Lu Xiaofeng, and sensed the changes in the spiritual energy fluctuations and moved forward based on his intuition. However, he had a vague feeling that the spiritual energy fluctuations in the labyrinth were very likely to be deliberately deceiving him. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly took out a silk scarf from his bosom and carefully pulled out a thread from it. He fixed one end of the thread at the entrance of the labyrinth, then carefully walked deeper into the labyrinth while pulling out the thread from the scarf. When the thread was not enough, he took out another strip of cloth and another thread, connected it to the end of the thread, and then continued forward. Although Ying Rosa could not see, Zhu Yi, Xiao Yan, and the others outside the labyrinth could see that Su Yunxing, who was in the labyrinth in another dimension, had used the same method as Ying Rosa. This cautious and calm young man had also used the method of using the thread to determine the direction in the labyrinth. Lin Feng looked at this scene with interest. I remember that this is a Greek legend I read in my previous life. The main character in the story also used this method to get out of a labyrinth that no one had ever been able to get out of before. At a time like this, should I say that wisdom is universal? Lin Feng smiled. Forget it. Since you managed to evoke my memories, I'll let you off this time. Consider it a reward for you. If Lin Feng wanted to, he could still tamper with Su Yunxing and Ying Luo's threads, just like how he had altered the markings left behind by Li Xingfei and the others. Looking at the two youths in the video, Lin Feng smiled. However, it's too naive to think that they can get out of the maze just like that. Very soon, Irosa and Su Yunxing realized the problem almost at the same time. The two of them had almost walked through the entire maze, but in the end, they were shocked to find that the final outcome of every intersection was actually a dead end. Eliezer was furious. What kind of maze is this? Only entrances and no exits. Trying to amuse me? In another space, Su Yunxing's expression was also gloomy. This purple maze was actually a completely sealed palace. There was only one entrance and no exit. After spending so much effort, he was fooled. If it was anyone else, they would fly into a rage. Calm down, calm down. Su Yunxing looked up at the ceiling of the palace. The ancestor couldn't have set up this test to make fun of us. It must be because I haven't found the right method. He followed the threads and walked back to the entrance of the maze. Looking at the maze that looked like the mouth of an abyss, he fell into deep thought. On the other side, Irosa quickly calmed down after his initial rage and also returned to the entrance of the maze to think. Blind anxiousness and anger were not desirable. On the contrary, they would fall into the maze's trap. Irosa even suspected that the maze was trying to agitate him and cause his originally firm will to waver. Looking at Su Yunxing and Irosa, who had calmed down and were thinking seriously, Lin Feng slowly nodded. They're both promising talents. Lin Feng and the others were watching from the outside. Because everyone was in a separate space level and only one person was traveling alone, when they encountered setbacks and difficulties, everyone's different mental states were also clearly revealed. Some disciples had good aptitude and comprehension, and their progress in qi refinement was above average. However, their minds were weak. When they were trapped in the maze, they would feel anxious, depressed, and even irritable, which would affect their judgment. As time passed, the distance between the disciples had increased. Some people were trapped in the maze, and it was obvious that they would never be able to get out without help. A small number of people could still distinguish the direction in the maze, but they could not find the right path. They could only return to the entrance of the maze and think again, sorting out their thoughts. At this moment, a sound transmission crystal in Lin Feng's hand suddenly rang. After crushing the crystal, a voice that had not been heard in a long time came from the other side. Sect Leader Lin, how have you been? The person who sent the voice transmission to Lin Feng was Yan Mingyue, who had returned to White Cloud Mountain. Lin Feng replied, so it's fellow Taoist Yan. It's been a long time. Yan Mingyue smiled softly. I have to first congratulate Sect Leader Lin's disciples for winning the Desolate Sea Assembly. Fellow Taoist Yan, you're too kind. Lin Feng was silent for a while before he asked, about what happened at the assembly, fellow Taoist Yan, have you heard about it? Yan Mingyue replied, Mingyue has indeed heard about what happened. I'm also shocked by the reappearance of the 9 Glory Sky collapsing formation. Fortunately, Sect Leader Lin, Prince Anliang, and the other Taoists turned the tide and did not cause any unmanageable trouble. However, the 9 Glory Sky collapsing formation being controlled by the demon race is a disaster for the entire divine land. Whether it's Mingyue or my sect, they are all paying attention to this matter. This time, Mingyue came out of seclusion because she was entrusted by her sect to investigate this matter. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. If you're in charge of the investigation, what about the new Taoist world wayfarer? Yan Mingyue's voice paused for a while before she answered frankly, the sect has other arrangements for senior brother Lin. I'm not sure about the specific situation. Since she had already said it, Yan Mingyue did not continue to play dumb. Instead, she told Lin Feng directly, Lin Daohan, my eldest senior brother is the new Taoist world wayfarer appointed by the sect after junior brother Pang Jie stepped down. Yan Mingyue's voice was a bit unfathomable. I remember 3 years ago, because Mingyue and Long Yi both suffered heavy injuries, her physical body was completely destroyed, only leaving behind a strand of remnant soul residing in a ring. Later on, she finally awakened and met Sect Master Lin for the first time at that time. At that time, other than Sect Leader Lin's eldest disciple, Xiao Yan, there was also your youngest disciple, Shi Tianhao. Lin Feng was a little baffled. He did not know why Yan Mingyue suddenly brought up the past. He did not respond and only listened silently, believing that Yan Mingyue had more to say. Sure enough, Yan Mingyue continued, at that time, I once said that Sect Leader Lin's youngest disciple, Shi Tianhao, has extraordinary talent and is rare in the world. I've only seen such a high talent in one of my senior brothers. Lin Feng's pupils shrank slightly. You're referring to that Lin Daohan? Slowly, Yan Mingyue said, that's right. She fell into silence after she finished her sentence. Although she only mentioned that Lin Daohan had an extremely high talent in his bone foundation and did not comment on his talents in other aspects, Lin Feng believed that this person was not simple if Yan Mingyue was so serious. One must know that Yan Mingyue had already reached the primordial soul realm. When he reunited with Yan Mingyue at the opening ceremony outside the Sand Continent city, Lin Feng had already seen this. That was why he congratulated Yan Mingyue at that time. He congratulated her for not only regaining a new life, but also for improving her cultivation. Lin Feng nodded lightly and asked calmly, then may I ask if this eldest senior brother of yours is of the radical or conservative faction within your Taishu temple? Yan Mingyue was not surprised that Lin Feng knew the division of factions within Taishu temple. Her tone was also not the least bit displeased. Eldest senior brother is the most outstanding successor and standard bearer of the conservative faction in thousands of years. If there are no accidents, eldest senior brother will definitely take over the door of Taishu temple in the future. A smile suddenly appeared on Lin Feng's calm face. For such a person to suddenly enter the world instead of cultivating in seclusion in White Cloud Mountain, there must be a reason. I wonder who he is targeting? The demon world, Shu Mountain, the great Zhou. Yan Mingyue laughed softly. Now, perhaps you too, Sect Leader Lin. Lin Feng smiled. Then I am truly honored. Yan Mingyue smiled but did not speak. Then, as if she suddenly thought of something, she said with a smile, oh right, Sect Leader Lin, I only recently found out that the great Zhou dynasty has placed a spy in your faction. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he thought to himself. She is now allied with the Great Zhou dynasty. Why would she betray the Great Zhou dynasty? As he thought, Lin Feng made an "oh" sound. He did not hide it and said with a smile, so he was sent by the Great Zhou dynasty. So, sect leader Lin already knows? Yan Mingyue's tone had a hint of a smile. This is Emperor Zhou Liangpan's method. He is used to planning ahead. She said softly, but according to what I know, other than the Great Zhou dynasty, my sect, the Void Temple, also took advantage of Sect Master Lin's opening ceremony to place a hidden chess piece in Sect Master Lin's Celestial Sect of Wonders. Lin Feng's pupils suddenly contracted. Silently he said, "Indeed, I should feel honored. As long as sect leader Lin knows." After chatting for a while, Yan Mingyue ended the communication. Lin Feng thought for a moment and looked up at the image of the people in the Purple Qi Labyrinth. After a long time, a slight smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. At this moment, the disciples had returned to the entrance of the labyrinth. Other than Su Yunxing and Ying Rosa, Li Xingfei had also returned to the entrance. Lu Xiaofeng also shook his head and returned to the starting point. He looked at the huge labyrinth in front of him with some distress. Xiao Yan looked at this and tilted his head at Zhu Yi. "You're pretty accurate," Zhu Yi answered. "After all, I was the one who taught them. Although I can't say I know everything, I have a general idea." He sighed. "But they still have a long way to go to get out of the labyrinth master setup." The little guy giggled. Actually, before entering the labyrinth, Master's hint was already very explicit. Chapter 365. Xiao Bud Ian smiled and said, "Jump out of the shackles, be flexible, don't stick to the rules, and don't let your brain become rigid. Many times, as long as you look at things from a different perspective, getting out of the maze is actually a piece of cake." Silently, Wang Lin said, "In addition, you have to stay true to yourself, see your true nature, and get rid of the falsehood." He looked at the purple labyrinth in front of him. Although we haven't entered, we can feel that the purple gas in the labyrinth will cause many illusions and disturbances. Only by getting rid of all the illusions and disturbances and staying true to yourself can we find the correct way to get out of the labyrinth. Lin Feng listened to the conversation of his direct disciples and looked at the light in the air. Looking at the second-generation disciples in the labyrinth, he sighed softly in his heart. There's still a gap in talent. If it was Xiao Yan and the others, even if they were only at the qi cultivation stage, after entering the labyrinth, they would probably be able to find the correct way out very quickly under Lin Feng's guidance. They would not be like the second-generation disciples in front of him. The most outstanding few people had to first hit the dust in the labyrinth and then return to the entrance to start over again. However, Lin Feng was also mentally prepared for this. A sect needed amazing geniuses like Xiao Yan and the others, but it also needed a stable and down-to-earth foundation of the sect. Only by complementing each other could they go far on the path of cultivation. In the labyrinth, Su Yunxing's eyes suddenly lit up. He turned to look at the entrance behind him. Jump out of the shackles, be flexible, stay true to yourself, and get rid of the falsehood. Is the entrance the exit? He walked towards the entrance, but was blocked by an invisible barrier. Su Yunxing was not discouraged. He only frowned. Is it wrong? That's true. If that's the case, then it's really like child's play. It's too opportunistic. He turned his head again and carefully looked at the labyrinth. From the entrance, there was a tall purple wall in front of him. There was a passage on the left and right side, but Su Yunxing had already done experiments. Both paths were blocked, and they would eventually reach a dead end. Su Yunxing believed that the exit of the labyrinth definitely existed, but where was it? After pondering for a moment, Su Yunxing's eyes gradually lit up, and he stepped into the purple qi maze once again. The passageway at the entrance still led to the left and right. However, this time, Su Yunxing did not choose to go left or right. Instead, he charged straight towards the purple wall facing the exit. Su Yunxing didn't try to use any power to destroy the purple wall. He just walked up to the wall step by step. A strange scene occurred. The purple wall was like a water curtain, ripples spread out. Su Yunxing's body directly passed through the wall and reached the other side. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others outside the maze all laughed. Someone finally found out. I was so worried. Xiao Bud-Ian laughed and said, "It's clearly a very simple method. Why hasn't anyone thought of it before?" Xiao Yan and the others all shook their heads and laughed. The way to walk through this maze was not to try to find the right passage. This was because the maze was completely sealed. There was only an entrance, and no exit in the traditional sense. The correct way to go was to walk in a straight line from the moment you entered the entrance. You had to pass through the walls until you passed through the entire Purple Chi labyrinth. Xiao Bud-Ian laughed and said, "Actually, walking through the maze is very simple. You just have to break the conventional thinking. But then again, Master's maze is so shameless, and it even changes the marks made by others. Fighting with such a maze that doesn't follow the rules, and you guys still follow the rules, aren't you just sending yourselves to the maze to cheat you?" In the maze, Su Yunxing finally found the correct path. In order to thoroughly verify his conjecture, he specially tried other places. In the end, he discovered that he could only pass through the wall directly at the entrance. If he tried other places, he would hit a wall. Su Yunxing walked all the way, and halfway through, he encountered a situation where he passed through a wall and there was a straight passage. He walked along the passage in a straight line, and when he came to an intersection where he needed to turn, he did not choose to turn, and instead continued walking straight towards the wall. As expected, he passed through the high wall again. In this way, in just a short while, Su Yunxing completely walked out of the Purple Chi maze. When he passed through the last high wall, he instantly arrived outside the maze. Su Yunxing's face revealed a happy smile, but his heart suddenly trembled slightly. Then, he discovered that there was another person who walked out of the Purple Chi maze at almost the same time as him. It was the dark and skinny Ing Rosa. The two of them looked at each other, and Ing Rosa shook his head. "I still can't beat you." Su Yunxing smiled. "There will always be a chance." Not long after Su Yunxing and Ing Rosa, Li Xingfei and Lu Xiaofeng also finally understood the secret hidden in the maze, and walked out one after another. Lin Feng turned to Xiao Yan and the others and said, "All of you should also prepare yourselves. After Master's test is over, it will be your turn to accept disciples. To put it bluntly, there are only a limited number of good seedlings, and they still have the freedom to choose. Who you can get will depend on your own ability." Zhu Yi and the others looked at each other and smiled. They all turned into streams of light and passed through the Rainbow Cloud Bridge, flying towards their respective cave abodes. Fen Tian Cliff, Qian Tian Palace, Fan Lin Residence, Snow Wind Valley, Nirvana Paradise, and Desolate Sky Valley, the 6 cave abodes all lit up with dazzling lights. Xiao Yan used the Rainbow Cloud Bridge's spatial teleportation function to return to Fen Tian Cliff. After returning, he smiled and said, "Master, I still need to trouble you to help me." Lin Feng smiled. With a thought, the 3 types of true fires on the surface of Fen Tian Cliff jumped together. The Nether Evil Flame and Nan Mingli Fire were suppressed, and only the Golden True Sun Fire was left. You still can't control the Nan Mingli Fire, and the Nether Evil Flame is too violent. Just use the True Sun Fire. Lin Feng used his dermic powers to send a voice transmission to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan nodded and began to wait on Fen Tian Cliff with peace of mind. The stipulated time limit was soon up. Lin Feng took a look and saw that only 11 people had successfully walked out of the maze. Among them, 9 were second-generation disciples, and the other 2 were Xiao Huan and another boy. In terms of qi cultivation, the average level of the boys was higher, but in terms of talent, comprehension, and especially willpower, there were much fewer who could pass the test. "Time's up." Lin Feng calmly waved his hand, and the purple maze disappeared instantly. It turned into a purple auspicious cloud and lifted up the people who were still trapped in the maze. The faces of these youths were all filled with disappointment. They looked at Su Yunxing and the others, their eyes filled with envy. Lin Feng stood in the void, and his entire body seemed to be one with heaven and earth. His voice was not loud, but it echoed in the entire space. "Those who pass the test, choose according to your own wishes. Go to the 6 cave abodes and become apprentices. This is the second test for you. Each cave abode has different restrictions. Only by passing the test can you truly enter the cave abode. Those who cannot pass will have to wait for the next chance. Su Yunxing, Ying Rosa, and the others were all shocked. They had just relaxed after passing the purple maze, but they became nervous again. They respectfully bowed to Lin Feng and said, "Yes, master." The rest of the disciples and boys who had not passed looked curiously at Fantion Cliff and the other cave abodes. Although they had not obtained the right to become apprentices, they wanted to see if Su Yunxing and the others could pass the second test. At the same time, they also wanted to see what kind of test Xiao Yan and the others would set up to satisfy their curiosity and prepare for the next test. As they had already known that they would be apprenticed, Su Yunxing and the others had already thought about who they would be apprenticed to. Therefore, they did not hesitate and bowed to Lin Feng together before heading to their respective cave abodes. Ying Rosa secretly glanced at Lin Feng and gritted his teeth. If I could discover the correct way to move through the maze, not only would I be able to defeat Su Yunxing, I might even be apprenticed to the ancestral master. Lin Feng silently watched as the 11 people made their choices. An interested smile appeared on his face. Interesting. In terms of quantity, Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi were the most popular masters. The two of them together accounted for more than half of the disciples. This was due to many factors. The second-generation disciples did not participate in the desolate Sea Dharma assembly. After everyone returned to the mountain, no one told them about the Dharma assembly. Therefore, the people on the mountain were not clear about the performance of Lin Feng's direct disciples at the Dharma assembly. These juniors actually did not know much about Lin Feng's 6 direct disciples. They could only make their choices based on their past impressions. Among them, Xiao Yan was Lin Feng's first disciple, while Zhu Yi had always been the head instructor. Ever since they entered the sect, he had been teaching them Dao techniques. Therefore, it was not surprising that these two were the most popular. For these juniors, their direct understanding of the strength of Lin Feng's 6 direct disciples stopped at the battle outside the Sand Continent City before the opening ceremony. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and Tiny Tot used their golden elixir cultivation to fight against the Yuanying Patriarch, which shocked everyone. At that time, Wang Lin, who was only at the early stage of foundation establishment, was inevitably much weaker. As for Tiny Tot, he still looked like a cute Shota. Although they knew that he was strong, it was still a psychological barrier for a group of second-generation disciples who were older than him to acknowledge him as their master. As a result, Tiny Tot's desolate Sky Valley was completely deserted. This made the originally excited Tiny Tot rather dissatisfied. He sat at the entrance of the desolate Sky Valley gloomily, looking at the disciples who were walking towards other caves with a face full of resentment. Similarly deserted was Yang Qing's Nirvana Paradise. In the past, Yang Qing and these second-generation disciples participated in the opening ceremony and entered the sect. In the end, they became Lin Feng's direct disciple in one step. Although they knew that Yang Qing was already a foundation establishment cultivator at that time, these proud youths still could not put down their pride to acknowledge him as their master. Lin Feng scanned with his divine sense and found that Yang Qing's emotions were stable. He even faintly sighed in relief. He also felt that it would be very awkward for him to accept these disciples who entered the sect at the same time as him. This way, he could actually relax. Stinking brat with no ambition. Lin Feng grinned. Teaching you as your master still has a long way to go. On the other hand, although Yu Hongyan was in the same awkward situation as Yang Qing, because she was the only female among the 6, she attracted the attention of other disciples to acknowledge her as their master. Other than Xiao Huan, who had always been close to her, there was also a female second-generation disciple who also chose Snow Wind Valley. Lin Feng looked at the gentle and weak young girl in amusement and shook his head repeatedly. You've chosen blindly. Hong Yan's swift and fierce style is something that most girls really can't learn. The 4 most outstanding people among the second-generation disciples, Su Yunxing, Ying Lejia, Li Xingfei, and Lu Xiaofeng, also made their own choices at this moment. Chapter 366. Among the 4 most outstanding second-generation disciples, Lu Xiaofeng chose Xiao Yan's Burning Heaven Cliff. The little fatty, who had always been close to him, passed the purple chi maze at the last moment and also qualified for the second exam. He followed behind Lu Xiaofeng and asked hesitantly, "Big brother Feng, which one do you think I should choose?" Lu Xiaofeng stopped and looked at him amusedly. "That's up to you to decide." The little fatty smiled embarrassedly but still looked at Lu Xiaofeng with a pleading gaze. Lu Xiaofeng said lazily, "Elder Zhu is the teacher in charge. He was ordered by the founder to teach the foundation of us new disciples. I guess that if there is no accident, Elder Zhu will also be responsible for the teacher in charge when new disciples enter the sect in the future. In the future, there will be more and more disciples. Elder Zhu may also be like the patriarch and only give a lecture every once in a while to answer the questions of the new disciples. Then, the job of teaching the new disciples may fall on the shoulders of Elder Zhu's disciples." The little fatty hesitated and asked, "Big brother Feng, you're saying?" Lu Xiaofeng spread out his palms and said indifferently, "Yes, if I become Elder Zhu's disciple, I don't know about other things, but the expansion of my social network in the future will be the most convenient. Most of the new disciples will leave a relationship with me. Even if they choose to become disciples of other elders in the future, they will most likely remember Elder Zhu's kindness in teaching them." The little fatty asked curiously, "Big brother Feng, since you see it so clearly, why don't you become Elder Zhu's Heaven Palace's disciple?" Lu Xiaofeng smiled nonchalantly. "I feel that I will be more relaxed and at ease under Elder Zhao's tutelage, so I chose Elder Xiao for no special reason. I don't have great ambitions, it's best to be relaxed and at ease." The little fatty made up his mind. "I'll be with you, Big brother Feng." Lu Xiaofeng laughed. "I've already told you, this is something that you have to decide for yourself." "I've thought it through very clearly." Little fatty answered very seriously, "Although it's good to become Elder Zhu's disciple, Elder Zhu's requirements are too strict. I'm not used to it." Lu Xiaofeng shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, "Since you've thought it through, let's go. I'm also quite happy that we brothers can still learn together." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Together, they walked towards Xiao Yan's Burning Heaven Cliff. Just as Lu Xiaofeng had said, a considerable number of people chose to acknowledge Zhu Yi as their master, and this included Su Yunxing. If Elder Zhu continues to take on the responsibility of teaching the new disciples, then his branch will definitely become the most powerful branch in Xianmen Tianzong if it continues to develop in the future. I wonder if the ancestral master and the other elders will allow this to happen? Su Yunxing thought to himself, but even without this advantage, I should still choose Qian Tian Hall. The Qi refinement Taoist scripture of Yi's 8 trigrams was created by Elder Zhu. He should be the most familiar with this Taoist scripture. Learning under him is the most advantageous, and I'll be half a step ahead. In the future, when I reach foundation establishment, I believe that the Taoist scripture of Yi's 8 trigrams will also be of the same lineage. I'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort compared to learning under the other elders. This will give me another half a step ahead. With the accumulation of advantages, there will definitely be a relatively large gap in the end. Su Yunxing took a deep breath. If I want to do it, I have to do it the best. Choosing Elder Zhu is the most suitable choice. Su Yunxing had chosen to become a disciple of Qian Tian Hall after careful consideration. On the other hand, Ying Rose's thinking was simple. He would go wherever Su Yunxing went. That was the only way he could compete with Su Yunxing frequently. If he went to someone else, so what if he could become the strongest in that branch? He had never won against Su Yunxing, and others would think that he was afraid of Su Yunxing, which was why he deliberately avoided him. Lin Feng looked at Su Yunxing and Ying Rosa, who were walking side by side towards Qian Tian Hall, not looking at each other and not communicating at all. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This plot is so melodramatic. I have no objections if the two of you want to be each other's lifelong rivals. As long as you don't love each other and kill each other, it's fine. I'm getting old and I can't stand that. Lin Feng's gaze turned to the other side. But why are you doing this? Are you burning a cold stove? There, a beautiful girl dressed in purple was walking step by step towards Wang Lin's mortal forest residence. She was also the only disciple who had chosen to become Wang Lin's disciple. Her choice surprised many people. These second-generation disciples did not know the specific cultivation realms of Lin Feng's 6 personal disciples. Their impression of Wang Lin was still at the battle outside Sand Continent City. Wang Lin's cultivation was clearly weaker than Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and Xiao Budian, and his performance was not as outstanding as those 3. Wang Lin was usually busy with cultivation and had always lived in seclusion. Among the 6 great disciples, he was the most mysterious, even to the extent that after the opening ceremony, all the second-generation disciples had never seen him again. Facing everyone's surprised gazes, Li Xingfei ignored them. She had her own analysis. Other than Dao techniques, resources are also very important. Elder Xiao is in charge of the alchemy room, but many people have already rushed over. Elder Yang is in charge of the medicinal valley, but he hasn't been in the sect for long, so his cultivation is not as high as Elder Wang's. Elder Wang is in charge of the hidden scriptures tower, so I have an advantage in Dao techniques that others don't. Lin Feng's gaze swept across Su Yunxing, Ying Rosa, Li Xingfei, and Lu Xiaofeng, and a smile appeared on his face. Interesting. At this time, the choices of the 11 people who had passed the Purple Qi Labyrinth's test were already clear. Zhu Yi was indeed expected to be the most popular choice. He alone took on 5 disciples, which was almost half of the total, including the most outstanding second-generation disciples, Su Yunxing and Ying Rosa. Of the remaining 6, 3 chose Xiao Yan, including Lu Xiaofeng, who could be sent to the 4th place among all the second-generation disciples. 2 chose Yu Hongyan, and only 1 chose Wang Lin, which was Li Xingfei. Xiao Budian and Yang Qing did not gain anything, and their reactions were completely different. Xiao Budian was sullen, while Yang Qing was relieved. Looking at this scene, Kang Nanhua slightly furrowed her brows, turning her head and looking towards Lin Feng, sect leader, letting the second-generation disciples choose freely like this, clear sky and Yang Qing being left out in the cold is a bit of a disgrace to them. Miao Shihao's face also showed a rare look of worry. Yes, and it will hurt their prestige in the eyes of the other disciples. Lin Feng slightly smiled. It's fine. Letting these second-generation disciples choose freely is giving them the right to choose, and at the same time, isn't it another kind of invisible test? Xiao Budian and Xiao Qing, Zi both know in their hearts that look at Xiao Budian's sullen appearance. He's just throwing a tantrum. I've already told them the true meaning behind this formless test. Kang Nanhua was slightly stunned and looked at Miao Shihao. The 2 of them looked at the 11 youths who had already arrived at their respective cave residences to accept the test. A moment later, a look of understanding appeared on the faces of the 2 guardian elders. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others had no intention of going easy on the test. They also hoped to select the most outstanding people to become their inner disciples. Influenced by Lin Feng, his direct disciples would always unconsciously look up to Lin Feng in certain aspects. Lin Feng had already made a name for himself in the great heaven primordial world. There were 2 things that people praised him for. Firstly, his cultivation was unfathomable, and his techniques were exquisite. Furthermore, he controlled a super-blessed grotto heaven like Yujing Mountain, which made others envious. Secondly, Lin Feng's 6 disciples were all monstrous. Any one of them was enough to make other forces so envious that they would want to bang their heads against a wall. Ever since Wang Lin had proven himself at the Desolate Sea Assembly, outsiders thought that Lin Feng's eye for choosing disciples was so vicious that it made people's hair stand on end. It was as if he would never make a mistake. Every direct disciple was a proud son of heaven who could shock the entire divine prefecture. And this special trait also imperceptibly spread to Xiao Yan and the rest, making them subconsciously produce a kind of thought. I also want to be like Master, all the disciples under me are shockingly talented. Any one of them can shock the world. As a result, even young talents like Su Yunxing, Ying Rosa, Li Xingfei, and Lu Xiaofeng, who had already proven themselves, felt extremely difficult and miserable when faced with Xiao Yan and the others' test. Wang Lin was especially strict. He completely ignored the fact that Li Xingfei was the only disciple under him. He seemed to have forgotten that if he eliminated Li Xingfei, he would also end up empty-handed like Xiao Budian and Yang Qing. In the end, almost half of the 11 people were eliminated after the test. Only Su Yunxing, Ying Rosa, Li Xingfei, Lu Xiaofeng, Xiao Huan, and the little fatty with Lu Xiaofeng passed the final test and became disciples of Zhu Yi and the others. Xiao Budian sat at the entrance of the desolate sky valley and supported his chin with his hand. He shook his head and said, "You're clearly not suitable, but you still refuse to give up. Fifei, what should I say about you guys?" After everyone finished the test, everyone once again gathered under the mystic sky treasure tree. Lin Feng then announced the end of the lecture and the test. Seeing that everyone was somewhat dispirited and annoyed, Zhu Yi came forward to talk to them. He admonished and encouraged them. As for Su Yunxing and the others who successfully passed the test, they constantly comforted their fellow disciples. Then, they brought everyone back to the disciples' residences. After they packed up their things, they also moved to the cave residences of their respective masters. Lin Feng asked Wang Lin to stay behind and said with a smile, "Little Lin, no one can run away. It's time for you to take a trip to the hidden scripture tower." Wang Lin nodded and said, "Master, don't worry. These past few days, Disciple has been summarizing and organizing my own Dao technique. I already have a draft in my heart. I believe that I will be able to complete the Dao technique very soon." Watching Wang Lin enter the hidden scripture tower, Lin Feng suddenly slapped his head and said, "I almost forgot about something." Every time a direct disciple succeeded in forming their gold core, Lin Feng would give them a Yuanying realm magic tool according to the usual practice. Previously, when Wang Lin succeeded in forming his gold core, he had not given him a magic tool for the Yuanying realm. Right now, Lin Feng had a ready-made magic tool for the Yuanying realm, the Divine Ghost Golden Crown. However, Lin Feng never gave his disciples magic tools casually. Instead, he would try his best to suit their actual situation. Although the Divine Ghost Golden Crown was not bad, it was not very compatible with Wang Lin. Lin Feng thought for a while and flipped his palm. A ball of white light suddenly appeared in his palm. Chapter 367. A ball of white light appeared on Lin Feng's palm. In the middle of the white light was a huge white elephant. It was usually mighty and domineering, but it was now on the verge of death. There was a young boy lying on the elephant. He was the Yuanying of Yun Xiang Patriarch whom Lin Feng had captured during the opening ceremony outside the Sand Continent City. Yun Xiang Patriarch was the sect master of the North Foot Cloud Elephant sect of Kunlun Mountain. He had initially come to watch Xianmen Tianzong's opening ceremony, but he had the intention of currying favor with Pang Jie and Kong Chong. He had suddenly joined the attack on Xianmen Tianzong and was captured by Lin Feng. His body was destroyed by the clone of the god of war. Yuanying wanted to escape, but he was captured by Lin Feng. Lin Feng had not cared about him for the past few days, but he had been suppressing Yuanying, preventing him from recovering from his injuries. He had been in such a weak state. If Lin Feng had dealt with him earlier, it would have been fine. However, he had been living like a prisoner, as if there was a guillotine hanging over his head and he did not know when it would fall. That was the most painful thing for Yun Xiang Patriarch. After living in constant danger for such a long time, even though Yun Xiang Patriarch had formed Yuanying, his willpower was greatly damaged. The fear that he had rarely felt since he formed his gold core surfaced in his mind again. Seeing Lin Feng, Yun Xiang Patriarch was terrified. "Senior, please spare me. I'm willing to lead the Cloud Elephant sect to join Xianmen Tianzong," he wanted to beg again, but Lin Feng had already pointed his finger at his forehead. "You will reap what you sow in the past." Yun Xiang Patriarch let out a cry, but he had no strength to struggle. As time passed, Yun Xiang Patriarch's eyes became more and more unfocused. In the end, there was no aura at all. All that was left was the most primitive and ancient ignorance. He was truly ignorant and had no sense of self. He was like a newborn baby. The nascent soul of the Cloud Elephant Patriarch merged into one with the giant white elephant beneath him, and then its body continuously shrunk, finally condensing into a physical form, turning into a jade statue in the shape of a small white elephant, landing in Lin Feng's palm. Lin Feng raised a finger, tapping on the back of the white jade elephant. This white jade elephant statue's eyes instantly shone brightly. The little elephant made of jade seemed to come alive, curling up its legs and lying on Lin Feng's palm. Lin Feng flipped it over, carving a simple and unadorned rune at the bottom of the jade carving. The rune's outline and strokes were all blood red. The red light condensed and penetrated deep into the white elephant jade carving. The light in the white elephant's eyes retracted back into its body. Lin Feng smiled. This treasure can be named Cloud Elephant Seal. It's suitable for little Lin. After Lin Feng finished refining the Cloud Elephant Seal, his heart stirred. He sensed that Wang Lin, who was in the sutra repository, had also succeeded. He walked into the sutra repository and asked with a smile, "Little Lin, did everything go well?" Lin Feng looked up and saw Wang Lin frowning slightly. He sat cross-legged in front of a bookshelf and was deep in thought as he looked at a Tao manual in front of him. Seeing Lin Feng come in, Wang Lin hurriedly stood up and bowed. "Master?" Lin Feng looked at him and couldn't help but feel puzzled. He asked, "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Wang Lin picked up the Tao manual from the bookshelf and handed it to Lin Feng. His expression was a little distressed. "I've finished deriving the Tao technique. Please take a look, Master." Although the Tao technique is completed, I still feel that it's not perfect enough. I feel that it's still one step away from the ideal state in my heart. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed. "Oh?" He took the Tao manual from Wang Lin and scanned it with his divine sense. He had already browsed through the Tao technique. The Tao technique Wang Lin created was called the True Scripture of Myriad Heavens of Ultimate Path. It combined Wang Lin's comprehension of the great Tao of heaven and earth since he started cultivating. It used the 8 trigrams Great Tao Scripture as the foundation and integrated the 2 extreme power concepts of nirvana and creation. However, Lin Feng immediately realized that it was just like what Wang Lin said. This Tao technique was still a little bit away from being truly perfect. This had nothing to do with whether the Tao manual was incomplete or not. If the content was incomplete, the special function of the first floor of the scripture depository would automatically fill in the gaps. Wang Lin's True Scripture of Myriad Heavens of Ultimate Path was complete in content. The only thing lacking was that it didn't reach the ideal level in depth. The Tao arts that Xiao Yan, and the others created are actually also lacking in terms of depth. At least from Lin Feng's point of view, a lot of things they are also only at the beginner level. This is related to their current level. As they continue walking step by step on the path of cultivation in the future, they will definitely be able to continuously strengthen and deepen. However, the Tao techniques of Xiao Budian and the others had indeed dug out their own understanding of the principles of heaven and earth to the extreme. Wang Lin was different. This Tao technique of his was called the Extreme Path. However, it didn't reach his current limit. It was a little bit lacking in terms of concept. He definitely tried his best to perfect it. However, the reality was very cruel. It was precisely because of this that Wang Lin felt confused and distressed. Lin Feng looked at the True Scripture of Myriad Heavens of Ultimate Path in his hands. Suddenly, he had a thought and said, "Little Lin, now, enter your Yellow Springs Death Realm state." Wang Lin did as he was told. The golden elixir in his body trembled. Large amounts of black nirvana chi surged out of his body. He looked like the lord of the underworld that came from the Yellow Springs Death Realm. "Master, when I derived the Tao technique previously, I was also in the Yellow Springs Death Realm state." Lin Feng nodded and said slowly, "I know." He looked at Wang Lin and sighed in his heart, as expected. When little Lin first formed his gold core and used the Yellow Springs Death Realm, I didn't notice it. A look of realization flashed through Lin Feng's eyes. Now that I'm suspicious, I paid special attention and immediately saw the clues. Wang Lin had been working hard for many years, and finally, after accumulating enough, he soared to the sky. From the early stage of foundation establishment, he directly stepped into the early stage of gold core. The improvement in his strength was naturally earth-shaking. The haze in his heart for many years was swept away, and his whole person became much more relaxed. Even his usually cold face had more smiles than usual. Feeling proud and elated, this was the current state of Wang Lin's body and mind. However, there were two sides to everything. Wang Lin had turned over a new leaf and was in a good mood. He was no longer sullen and depressed. One of the direct consequences was that his Yellow Springs Death Realm cultivation had regressed. This didn't mean that Wang Lin's strength had regressed. In comparison, it wouldn't be a problem for him to fight 10 or 20 of the original him. Instead, it meant that Wang Lin couldn't return to his previous depressed state of mind. Wang Lin's Yellow Springs Death Realm was a completely extreme path. He completely transformed his mana into the vicious power of nirvana. The more extreme this transformation was, the stronger it was. The concept of nirvana and creation that Wang Lin comprehended were originally two opposite forces that walked the extreme path. Cultivating this kind of divine art was directly related to Wang Lin's state of mind, which was under great pressure at that time. His senior and junior brothers became stronger and stronger, and the gap between them grew bigger and bigger. Outsiders even looked at him with disdain. Thanks to Wang Lin's strong will, his mind didn't become twisted. Instead, he turned all of this into motivation to improve. But unknowingly, it helped him comprehend the divine art and mana of the Yellow Springs Death Realm. Little Lin's Yellow Springs Death Realm is the product of a mutation after the fusion of his soul and mana. Lin Feng thought, the more extreme a cultivator's emotions are, the more complete the transformation of mana into the power of nirvana would be. Wang Lin's current state of mind was naturally a form of relaxation for his cultivation, a form of improvement. The mortal forest house cave that he had settled down and managed exuded a bit of returning to one's true self. The Tao of nature making Zhu Yi, Xiao Yan and the others all feel that they had benefited a lot from it. But such a state of mind was undoubtedly a form of regression and damage to the Yellow Springs Death Realm. But when he was deriving the Heaven's Extreme Tao Sutra, Wang Lin couldn't help but fuse in the Yellow Springs Death Realm's concept. But because his state of mind had changed, he didn't get what he wanted. After hearing Lin Feng's explanation, Wang Lin was enlightened. He laughed self-mockingly, "I'm like this, right? I can't fully blame you." Lin Feng shook his head and laughed. "Little Lin, your thoughts are good and the path you're taking is correct. It's just that you haven't settled enough." Wang Lin nodded, "I will continue to study the Tao. There's no rush." Lin Feng thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Little Lin, do you have any plans to go home to visit your family?" When Wang Lin heard this, he was stunned. He opened his mouth but didn't make a sound. In the real world, he had only been away from home for 2 years. But because he was cultivating in the mysterious Heaven-Time Light Grotto Heaven, many years had passed in Wang Lin's own time. Previously, he was focused on cultivation and spent all his energy on cultivation. He didn't feel anything when there was no sun or moon in the mountains. But now that Lin Feng mentioned it, he suddenly felt an uncontrollable longing for his family. It instantly filled his heart. Now that he had formed the golden elixir, even if he went home, it could be said that he had returned home in glory and could make his parents proud. Wang Lin composed himself. After calming his emotions, he said slowly, "There's no rush. I will first perfect the Tao and teach it to my disciples. It won't be too late to go home when Li Xingfei's cultivation is completely on the right track." "You decide that yourself," Lin Feng said. "A loving mother holds the thread in her hand and a wandering son wears the clothes on his back." For most parents, no matter how short a period of time their children have been away, they will still miss them. Wang Lin nodded repeatedly. Looking at Lin Feng, he also felt a surge of warmth in his heart. After bidding farewell to Wang Lin, Lin Feng went alone to the 3rd floor of the scripture repository and sat down. He looked at the void outside the window in a daze until a voice transmission crystal shattered and sent a message. After Lin Feng picked it up, he heard the voice of Heavenly Trade Pavilion steward, Song Fu. After hearing Song Fu's words, Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly. "The 4th prince of the great Zhou dynasty, Liang Qian, wants to pay a visit to me, Xianmen Tianzong? Sect leader Lin, please wait a moment." Song Fu's voice lowered and was followed by the voice of a young man. He had the natural grace of a noble, but he was very respectful in front of Lin Feng. The fourth prince of the great Zhou dynasty, Liang Qian, said that this time he wanted to enter the Kunlun Mountains to travel. As the well-deserved overlord of the northern foothills of the Kunlun Mountains, Xianmen Tianzong naturally wanted to pay a visit to the mountain gate. He also hoped to receive pointers from the master of the Taoist sect, Lin Feng. The great Zhou dynasty. Lin Feng's heart moved slightly and he immediately agreed. He used his mana to send a voice transmission to summon Zhu. Chapter 368. Ever since the opening ceremony outside the Sand Continent, Xianmen Tianzong had already become the #1 sect in the northern region of Kunlun Mountain. Almost all the sects in the northern region of Kunlun Mountain had come to watch the battle that day. Cloud Elephant Sect, which was originally one of the more powerful sects, wanted to ride on the coattails of Taishu Temple and Mount Shu Sword Sect. In the end, Cloud Elephant Patriarch was easily captured by Lin Feng, shocking everyone. Even in the entire Kunlun Mountain region, Xianmen Tianzong's reputation rose strongly. Even the #1 sect in the southern region of Kunlun Mountain, which was originally the overlord of Kunlun Mountain, the Wind God sect, was slightly overshadowed. Outside the Sand Continent, the Wind God sect suffered a great loss. The Yuanying Patriarch, True Lord Typhoon, was directly crushed to death by Yujing Mountain. However, after that, they did not dare to seek revenge. This had something to do with Yujing Mountain hiding in the void. However, in the eyes of outsiders, this was the Wind God sect admitting defeat and swallowing their grievances. Liang Qian was the prince of the great Zhou dynasty. His status was not low. However, because of this, he came to Kunlun Mountain to take action. Especially when he entered the northern region of Kunlun Mountain, he had to inform the host, Xianmen Tianzong. Because no matter what Liang Qian's original intention was, he did not represent himself. He also represented the great Zhou dynasty behind him. The moment Lin Feng received the news, the information of the noteworthy people in the great Zhou dynasty that Yan Mingyue had provided flashed in his mind. The 4 sons of Emperor Zhou, Liang Pan, are wise and magnanimous. They are decisive and have reached the peak late-stage golden elixir. They are very interested in the position of crown prince. After thinking for a while, Lin Feng agreed to Liang Qian's visit and ordered Zhu to be in charge of receiving him. After knowing the other party's identity, Zhu Yi revealed a smile. "Master, don't worry. I will go right away." The master and disciple looked at each other and smiled. Lin Feng asked, "How does it feel to officially be someone's master?" Zhu Yi smiled and said, "It's not that different from teaching many people before." Lin Feng nodded his head, using mana sound transmission to say something to Zhu. This mana sound transmission of his was also transmitted to Xiao Yan and the other 5 personal disciples at the same time. Zhu Yi and Xiao Yan were stunned. Zhu Yi was right in front of Lin Feng. He looked at Lin Feng in surprise. "Master, if that's the case, then why?" Lin Feng smiled and said, "It's fine. They are still useful." Zhu Yi revealed a thoughtful expression and nodded slowly. "Disciple understands. Master, don't worry, I know what to do. Eldest senior brother and the others will also pay attention to this issue." Lin Feng smiled and nodded his head. Zhu Yi then took his leave. Lin Feng's divine sense swept through the disciples' abode and found that most of them were cultivating seriously. They couldn't pass the previous assessment and could only watch helplessly as their playmates became inner disciples. This was a thrill for many people. After all, to be able to enter the celestial sect of Xianmen, these disciples were all talented. Especially those who were eliminated at the entrance of the 6 cave abodes, they worked even harder. No matter who it was, they would feel indignant when they fell at the finish line. Especially when Lu Xiaofeng and the little fatty came back to visit their friends who had a good relationship with them, it stimulated the motivation of most people. Ing Rosa was a wolf and was used to being alone. No one here was his friend. Su Yunxing and Li Xingfei had some concerns. They were worried that their old friends would think that they were showing off, so they did not plan to come back for a while. Only Lu Xiaofeng and Fatty did not have those concerns and ran back to find their old friends. Birds of a feather flocked together. Those who had played with them in the past were more cheerful and open-minded. They did not think that they had come back to show off. Instead, they were happy and felt that the two of them did not forget their old friends even though they had become rich. A young man grabbed Fatty's sleeve and carefully looked at the flame pattern on his sleeve. You and Brother Fong both have this pattern on your clothes. Fatty shook his head proudly. Of course, this is our Burning Heaven Cliff's unique symbol. After the group of second-generation disciples entered the sect, their attire was the same. Zhu Yi intercepted the cyclic purple chi and imitated his and Xiao Yan's attire to make it, a purple long robe with a Taiji symbol tattooed on the lower hem. After Lu Xiaofeng and Fatty became Xiao Yan's disciples, their clothes were still purple, but the style of their clothes became the same as Xiao Yan's. They also added a scarlet flame pattern on their sleeves. Although it was just a few strokes, it already outlined the aura of dancing and rising flames. Lin Feng looked at this scene and a smile appeared on his face. With a sweep of his consciousness, he already knew that other than Xiao Yan's Fentianya, after the other people took in disciples, they also added unique special marks on their disciple clothing. Seeing that Fatty was very cocky, the others all jeered, "You were just a blind cat running into a dead mouse. You were lucky to be able to follow Brother Fong into Burning Heaven Cliff." No way. Fatty shrunk his neck guiltily. When he passed through Lin Feng's purple chi labyrinth, there was indeed an element of luck. He was confused in the labyrinth and finally found the entrance with great difficulty. He scratched his head and couldn't think of a solution. In his anxiety, he hit his head against the wall in frustration. Who knew that he would accidentally discover the secret of passing through the labyrinth? After that, when he took the test in front of Burning Heaven Cliff, it was also with Lu Xiaofeng's help that he barely passed. Thinking of how Xiao Yan stared at him with a smile that wasn't a smile after passing the test, Fatty felt even more guilty. Back then he and Lu Xiaofeng tried to pass the test at Burning Heaven Cliff, but unfortunately failed. The youth was from Su Yunxing's circle. When he saw him and Lu Xiaofeng just now, his eyes were full of grief. Lu Xiaofeng giggled as he watched Fatty being teased by the others. At this time, someone came up to him and asked curiously, "Brother Fong, the ancestor said before that if you can become a chamber disciple, there will be rewards. What are your rewards?" Lu Xiaofeng didn't hide it and generously extended his right hand. On it was a ring with a small piece of sparkling white jade embedded in it. "This is the new storage ring that was given to us. Its capacity is close to 10 times larger than the original storage bag. It's very useful." The others surrounded him, their faces full of envy. The little Fatty became lively again, also flashing his own right hand, like a proud rooster. "What else? What else?" everyone asked. Little Fatty coughed and said, "Other than that, there are many elixirs as well. Let's not talk about the essence-gathering elixir and essence-enhancing elixir. The key is a thunderous great rejuvenation elixir and a barrier-breaking elixir. One can effectively heal injuries and is very effective for serious injuries. As long as one isn't on the verge of death, they can be saved." Fatty talked non-stop. The barrier-breaking pill can help break through bottlenecks in cultivation. They are both very useful medicinal pills. Fatty paused and a proud smile appeared on his face. His left hand touched the storage ring on his right hand and with a swoosh, a few talismans appeared. A terrifying spiritual power spread out, shocking everyone present. Especially one of the red talismans, its power made everyone feel fear. "These are our rewards. Everyone gets 5 Foundation Establishment Realm talismans. Look at this one, it's a golden elixir period talisman." Fatty waved his hands and said, "We're only in the Qi cultivation realm, yet everyone gets 1 golden elixir period talisman. Master also said that this is because our cultivation is too low. Otherwise, there would be even better things waiting for us." A young man said in shock, "When I was at home, I heard that even many big sects wouldn't give golden elixir talismans to their Qi cultivation realm disciples. Qi cultivation realm cultivators can have golden elixir talismans. A small number of people pick them up by chance while traveling outside. Most of them have relatives with high-level great cultivators. That's why they can get a protective talisman." Fatty raised his head. Isn't that right? We just entered the sect, and each of us was given 3 foundation establishment realm talismans to protect ourselves. At that time, we hadn't even cultivated chi yet. Now that we've just become inner disciples, we immediately get a golden elixir period talisman to protect ourselves. Also, I heard Master say that this is just the beginning. Compared to the others, my master is... At this point, Lu Xiaofeng suddenly interrupted him and said to the others with a smile, "Anyway, everyone work hard. Grandmaster said that there will be another test in the future. Maybe it will be in the near future." Everyone agreed in unison. Lu Xiaofeng turned his head and glared at Fatty unhappily where no one could see. Fatty smiled embarrassedly. They were guarding Xiao Yan, so they actually had more pills than the other cave abodes. Xiao Yan actually didn't care if others knew. Zhu Yi and the others could probably guess it. However, Lu Xiaofeng still told Fatty not to tell others about this. In the end, Fatty was so excited that he almost spilled the beans. Lin Feng looked at this scene with a bit of a smile. One of the few people with the highest luck among the second-generation disciples, this Fatty, having high luck is also an advantage. This was the value of setting a role model. With Lu Xiaofeng and Fatty's example, the disciples' passion for cultivation rose again. This made Lin Feng nod repeatedly. "Master, we're back." At that moment, Lin Feng received Zhu Yi's message. He waved his hand in the air and a crack appeared in the void. A group of people swarmed out. The person in the lead was Zhu Yi. Half a step behind him was a young man with a golden crown on his head, jade-colored clothes, and a folding fan in his hand. The moment the young man saw Lin Feng, he bowed. "I'm Liang Qian of Great Zhou. Greetings, Master of Mystic Sect, Senior Lin." He used the most standard form of greeting that juniors in the cultivation world used to greet seniors. It was calm and polite without losing his status. Lin Feng nodded slightly. "Fourth Prince, you're too polite. I've known your father for a long time, but we never had the chance to meet. Now that I've met you today, I can imagine your father's demeanor." Liang Qian replied hurriedly, "How would I dare to compare myself to father? However, father did mention that he hoped to meet senior. There will be a chance." Lin Feng smiled. His gaze landed on the people behind Liang Qian. 2 late-stage Yuanying cultivators stood on either side of Liang Qian, faintly guarding him. Apart from them, there was also a golden elixir period cultivator who looked like a middle-aged scholar. However, what caught Lin Feng's attention was that the last person was a young man who was only at the qi refinement stage. The few of them bowed to Lin Feng together. Lin Feng accepted it calmly. His gaze landed on the young man who was only at the qi refinement stage. Liang Qian definitely had many followers with him. However, those who were chosen by him to be brought to Jade Capital Mountain were definitely the most trusted of trusted subordinates. However, he did not know what was so special about this young man who looked like he was only 15 or 16 years old and was only at the qi refinement stage. I remember when he introduced himself earlier, he said his name was Chu Yang. Chapter 369. After all, Liang Qian was only a prince of the great Zhou dynasty, not the crown prince. He couldn't compare to the Qin dynasty's Chongyun crown prince, who had Dao Master Xing Do accompanying him. However, he also had 2 late Yuanying ancestor guards. The middle-aged man who looked like a scholar from the golden elixir period seemed to be a strategist. This was normal. It didn't mean that the higher one's cultivation was, the better one would be at scheming. This was especially true for a prince like Liang Qian who aspired to the position of crown prince. He definitely needed a strategist. Compared to these people, the young man called Chu Yang seemed a little different. Although he was dressed as a servant, his temperament was completely different from ordinary servants. In particular, this person's eyes revealed a sense of vicissitudes that was completely different from his age. Lin Feng transmitted to Zhu Yi, "Little Yi, this Chu Yang, did he look like this when you first met him?" "Master, when I first met him, he disguised himself very well. He was just like Liang Qian's personal servant." Zhu Yi also replied to Lin Feng through mana sound transmission. "At the start when Liang Qian wanted to bring him up the mountain together, I didn't pay attention. I only thought that he was Liang Qian's most convenient servant. But after leaving the main group and setting off, when only the 6 of us were left, this person became like this. Zhu Yi swept a glance at Chu Yang. This person didn't seem to plan on disguising himself. He even bowed to me. I can tell that this bow is out of respect for my cultivation and strength. It has nothing to do with my status. Liang Qian naturally also noticed Lin Feng's gaze landing on Chu Yang. He hesitated for a moment before calmly saying, "This fellow Taoist Chu is Junior's friend and Junior has benefited greatly from him. In order to move around conveniently and protect his safety, I've disguised myself as a servant." Chu Yang smiled slightly and cupped his fists towards Lin Feng. "Senior, please don't blame me. The 4th prince and I had no choice." He laughed self-deprecatingly. "It's just that my cultivation is too low. Any assassin would be able to take my life." "Young friend, you're underestimating yourself," Lin Feng said indifferently. Hearing this, the other 3 people beside Liang Qian frowned slightly, then relaxed. However, they couldn't help but look at Chu Yang with a bit more caution. Chu Yang's eyes flashed as he looked up at Lin Feng. Although it was just a brief glance, this action was already quite rude. In this glance, Lin Feng could clearly feel a sharp aura radiating from Chu Yang. That is a kind of aura that seems like it is going to pierce through the 9 heavens and howl through the wind and clouds. Even if this youth is only at the Qi disciple stage right now, Lin Feng can still clearly feel it. There was no other reason, it was just that Lin Feng was too familiar with this type of aura, so familiar that he could see it every day and be surrounded by it every day. Wasn't this the aura of a prince chosen by the heavens? Although the details were different, no matter how powerful one was, they would still become a backdrop for Chu Yang's rise. Add to this the domineering aura of, "If you touch me, I'll cut off your leg." The essence of the aura of a prince that made his underlings bow their heads in worship was exactly the same. I'm surrounded by this aura almost every day, and it's the aura of a prince multiplied by 4. Lin Feng shook his head and laughed inwardly. He transmitted to Zhu Yi, "Little Yi, how do you feel about this Chu Yang?" "I'm asking about the most direct, most basic first impression." Zhu Yi raised his eyebrows. "Most basic first impression? It's an indescribable feeling. It's a little awkward, a little sympathetic, but also a little annoying." "That's right," Lin Feng thought, "like repels. We're both the darlings of this era, the prided geniuses of legends. It's only natural that we don't see eye to eye with each other." Even with Xiao Yan and the others, it was probably the same at the beginning. It was only as they interacted with each other that it all turned into a brotherly bond. Lin Feng looked at the youth in front of him with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Chu Yang laughed bitterly in his heart and bowed, "Senior, please don't tease me." He felt a little uneasy. Could it be that the master of the mystic gate can see through my secret? Master and sect master are right. This person is indeed unfathomable. I must be careful and try to avoid contact with him as much as possible. The target meets the criteria, but has already taken someone else as his master. The original master-disciple relationship must be dissolved before he can become the host's direct disciple. Lin Feng used the system's talent detector to check on Chu Yang and received a result that made him feel sorry for him. He didn't continue to make things difficult for Chu Yang. The other party had lied in front of him, and what he said just now was enough to make Chu Yang suffer. The little guy wanted to rack his brains to dispel the doubts of Liang Qian and the others. However, as Lin Feng chatted with Liang Qian, he used his transcendence energy to send a voice transmission to Chu Yang. "Little friend, who is your master?" Chu Yang's expression didn't change, but he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. "Could it be that you only saw through my master's background?" He also used his transcendence energy to send a voice transmission to Lin Feng. "My master, Meng Chaoran, has also met Senior once. My master often mentions Senior in front of this junior, praising you as a role model for us cultivators." The image of a tranquil and otherworldly middle-aged man appeared in Lin Feng's mind. "So you're a disciple of Beyond Heaven Mountain." Lin Feng felt slightly regretful. Even though Wu Yunliang and Meng Chaoran had taken a wait-and-see attitude during the opening ceremony outside Sand Continent City, Lin Feng didn't blame them. After all, he hadn't brought them any benefits, so why should they risk their lives for him? Of course, on the other hand, they hadn't contributed anything at the time, so if they wanted to ask Lin Feng for help afterwards, Lin Feng wouldn't care. Overall, Lin Feng had a good impression of Wu Yunliang and Meng Qiaoran, especially Meng Qiaoran. Looking at this Chu Yang, he seems to have a good relationship with his master. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. I won't think about it anymore. I hope that both master and disciple can write their own legends. The host and guests sat in the main hall of Xianmen Tianzong, the All Heavens Great Hall. Lin Feng sat in the middle of the main seat, while Liang Qian and the others sat below him, respectfully following the etiquette of a junior. Zhu Yi sat beside him, and the conversation between the two sides could be considered to be joyful. Silently, Chu Yang sat at the last seat, listening more and speaking less. Liang Qian and the others knew this side of him very well. They already knew that Chu Yang was an observant person, and that his words would always hit the nail on the head. But in reality, Chu Yang was currently absent-minded, and his mind had already flown to God knows where. Was that a dream, and I'm currently in reality? Or was that actually reality, and I'm just daydreaming? Chu Yang was lost in thought. Not long ago, he had accidentally fainted while cultivating with his junior brother. In the process of fainting, he felt as if he had experienced a long period of time, as if he had stepped into the river of time. It was like a real experience, something that should have happened. Chu Yang stood there, as if he was witnessing the future of his life. Everything was detailed and real, and every person he came into contact with was vivid and lifelike. But that was definitely a tragic life. Chu Yang saw his sect, Heavens Beyond Mountain, be destroyed in the near future. The sect was reduced to ruins, and the corpses of his fellow disciples littered the ground. His master, Meng Qiaoran, who had raised him since he was young, died in battle, and died with Heavens Beyond Mountain. And before that, he was protected by Meng Qiaoran, but the ignorant him didn't even know why his sect would be attacked by Heavens Beyond. After that, he desperately investigated the cause of Heavens Beyond Mountain's disaster. Finally, he found out that Heavens Beyond Mountain was actually a sacrifice in the conflict between the Shushan Sword sect and the Great Zhou dynasty. Heavens Beyond Mountain was attached to the Shushan Sword sect, and the Great Zhou dynasty's fourth prince, Liang Qian, planned to visit the Shushan Sword sect. Previously, when he was touring the Kunlun Mountains, the Shushan Sword sect had arranged for Heavens Beyond Mountain, which was located at the southern foot of the Kunlun Mountains, to play host. Originally, everything was normal, but in the end, Liang Qian was assassinated at the southern foot of the Kunlun Mountains. After the investigation, it was discovered that he had been betrayed, and thus fell into a trap. The traitor pointed directly at Heavens Beyond Mountain. Heavens Beyond Mountain suffered the wrath of the Great Zhou dynasty, and thus was destroyed. This incident became the fuse, and then a series of conflicts occurred. In the end, the relationship between the Great Zhou dynasty and the Shushan Sword sect deteriorated rapidly. Facing the huge Great Zhou dynasty, Chu Yang didn't cower. He had obtained an opportunity that belonged to him, and so he focused on cultivation, looking forward to the day when he could rise again. During the process of cultivation, he went to the ancient Yuan-Tian realm, and there he grew rapidly. It was also in the ancient Yuan-Tian realm that Chu Yang met the love of his life, but in the end he lost her forever. That experience was so real that Chu Yang felt waves of heartache when he thought about it now. If this is a dream, I hope that I will never wake up from this dream. If this is a dream that predicts my future, I definitely won't let the tragedy repeat itself. In that world, Chu Yang died before his ambitions could be fulfilled. It was also at the moment of his death that his consciousness seemed to return to the current world, to the moment when he woke up after fainting while cultivating with his fellow disciples. In order to prevent the tragedy from repeating itself, Chu Yang had been planning and preparing from the moment he woke up. He displayed talent and wisdom that far surpassed what he had in the past. First, he gained the favor of his uncle master, Wu Yunliang. It was through the information revealed by Wu Yunliang and what he knew before that Chu Yang finally pieced together the truth of the destruction of Beyond Heaven Mountain in that life. His second uncle master, one of the core figures of Beyond Heaven Mountain, had long been bribed by the Great Qin Empire's minister Wu Qingru. Beyond Heaven Mountain's affiliation with the Mount Shu sword sect was completely planned by Wu Qingru. Liang Qian's assassination was also Wu Qingru's doing. Her goal was to make the Mount Shu sword sect and the Great Zhou dynasty face off, so that they would have no time to care about anything else. And during this time, Wu Qingru launched a purge of the Great Qin Empire's aristocratic forces. This kind of internal strife was the easiest time for external enemies to take advantage of, but Wu Qingru successfully sent the two enemies to fight first, eliminating the worry of the future. She took the opportunity to get rid of the biggest tumor that had weakened the Great Qin Empire in recent years. But it was a pity for Beyond Heaven Mountain. Wu Qingru was the person who planned the game, while the Great Zhou dynasty and the Mount Shu sword sect were the players. Beyond Heaven Mountain was just a chess piece that was eaten after it had played its role. After understanding the cause of the matter, Chu Yang naturally did his best to prevent all of this from happening. But there was always a kind of fear in his heart, especially when he looked at Lin Feng. This fear was even clearer. Can the future that I know from that dream become something that I can rely on? If it can, why does my dream not have the existence of this master of the Taoist sect? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.